Welcome to the Pass and Screen Away podcast, brought to you by Pop the Trunk Sports. We got our usual suspects tonight. I'm Chris Hendricks. We got Rocky Rhodes all the way out in Pocatello. How you doing, buddy?
What's up, man?
We got TK
How's it going, man?
and Big Rory Patterson.
Fellas, you guys ready to get to this?
All right, let's do this, guys. We'll start with our DraftKings lineup, something that all four of us have been obsessed with lately.
Yep.
And for me, I've been getting my ass kicked lately. Kind of a black cat right now. But I got $9 in action tonight, so I'm looking forward to kind of getting, building off something. But TK, what kind of some things you've been doing to have some success? I know you've had a good week.
Yeah, I've been taking advantage of those multipliers. I recently looked into those the last couple days, and all that consists of, if you do, say, a $5 one, they do 57 people are in it, and top 5 get 10 times their buy-in. So top 5 people get $50. And I just seem to have been able to exploit people who kind of build balanced teams in those ones. And the way I've been approaching my lineups in those is I kind of go top heavy. And then I feel I can do a pretty decent job of getting value out of some of those $3,000 players. So that's really what I've been hitting up lately.
So when you kind of build in your teams, you kind of pick your top-heavy guy. Does it matter what position you go with first? Do you have just a specific player you pick first and then just kind of build it from there?
To an extent. I mean, I'll look at the schedule, and then, of course, I'll see who's out of all the big players, who are the big players that are playing tonight, and pretty much who they're going up against, how the style of play in terms of the game's going to go. So I'll kind of, say, for instance, a guy like James Harden tonight, he, to me, was a no-brainer. He was by far, the guy I was going to try and get on pretty much all my teams, as many of them as I could, just because he's going up against the Lakers, and whether he goes up against Kobe Bryant or whoever, he's going to have a matchup where they basically aren't going to play any defense at all. Mm-hmm. And kind of vice versa, too. Kobe Bryant's another guy that I generally will put in my lineups, especially on a night like tonight, even though he's coming off a back-to-back. It's just because he's going up against James Harden, and we all know James Harden isn't known for his defense. So that's kind of the thought process that I go into when I'm building my teams, is trying to find, look at the studs and see who are the studs going up against in terms of the teams that they're playing against that night.
And on these multipliers, what kind of fields are you in?
So yeah, that, because they only do for the 10 times you're buying, they only do say the $5 one. There's only 57 people. They do a $2 one where they pay the top 10 people and you get $20 if you get in the top 10, but you have to go up against 120 people. But none of them, in terms of, I think a lot of it might have to do with maybe the buy-in size. You're going up against more fish than you would have, say, if this was a $20 one. So it just is a good way to kind of build your bankroll when you're down to your last $20 or whatever.
Or $9.
Yeah,
or
$9.
So TK, is it the same strategy that you use a 50-50, or do you have kind of a different mentality for that?
I kind of approached it more towards a tournament, just because it is only top 5 will get paid, if you do the $5 one, I keep going back to. Mm-hmm. But because of that, I'm going to build my team, you kind of brought up, just top heavy. That's the strategy I'm always going to take in a field where so few people are going to cash in, because you're going to want a team with upside, since only 5 places get paid.
So Rocky, for you being more of a veteran of these daily leagues, do you agree with that strategy, or do you have a different angle?
I think if you're going to do the multipliers, that's definitely probably the way that you're going to go, because you got to place top 5 to cash your ticket. Mm-hmm. And so you're going to need a pretty big number to do that. Me personally, I'm not a big multiplier fan. I'm a little bit more conservative with the 50-50s. I just think, as you guys have all seen, there's going to be nights that you have that just nothing happens. But, if you get to 240 to 260, you're pretty much guaranteed a cash on a 50-50 league. Mm-hmm. Whereas 240, 260, you're probably not going to cash at all on a multiplier unless it's a really low night. And so I just don't like having to chase a number like 280 all the time to cash a ticket.
Right. Right, that makes sense. Maybe something that you would do along with a bunch of other 50-50s if you felt really strongly about one roster, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I think the people that do it professionally and have a big bankroll, I think what they do is they hit every 50-50 and then they throw a little bit of money at the tournaments and the multipliers as well. That way, if they're 50-50 hits, they at worst break even. And then if they have a great night like everybody's capable of having, they win everything,
Right.
And so but again, like TK says, when you're down to your last $10-$20, there's not a lot to lose out of it. So
And TK, what kind of number are you chasing a number in those multipliers? What kind of numbers have you been getting around?
It's kind of along the point Rocky brought up where, you got to hit a high number to cash in those, just because, for instance, like we keep bringing up that $5 one, only top 5 get paid. So like a number like 280 probably isn't going to cash you a ticket in there. So I'm not necessarily thinking of the number. I'm just trying to build the team with the most upside that I can possibly put together.
Definitely.
So that really goes into my thought process more of trying to like hit a number.
Yeah. One main question I wanted to ask you guys too, from my experiences over like the last week or so betting, is at least I've found with my teams that when I mix it up, like I have a couple guys like I'm just for sure on. Like last week I was like huge on Jimmy Butler one night, and I put him like on all 3 of my teams that I bet on, and then I kind of mixed up some of my studs. It's like, let's say like Vucevic didn't have a good night, so I decided to go with Paul Millsap instead, or like just because I wasn't all the way sure. So I kind of mix it up with a couple of the usual suspects on all teams, but then mixing up on some of the other players. But then I was talking to Chris, and he was saying that he basically just plays like one team across all of his 50-50s. So I wanted to kind of see like what you guys thought about that.
Which is probably kind of why I've been, boomer bust.
Yeah.
Because I haven't been really mixing it up. But that's kind of how I am with things in general. It's kind of like, I just kind of want to get it in and have, success, or, you fail and you just kind of got to figure out, where your mistakes are made.
Well, and before you guys go, I also found that like the problem with that strategy was that, like, for instance, one of them was a $10 bet, the other one was a $5, and another one was a $1. And like I ended up winning the $1 and the $5 because they were different teams, but then lost my $10. So I ended up losing for the day, even though I won 2 of my 3 50-50s. So it was kind of tricky.
I like to put one team out. If I do a tournament, obviously I may put another team out separate than a 50-50, like TK kind of hit on, with more potential. But 50-50 goes, I'd like to put one team out. You're trying to win, 60% or above of the whole year of every entry that you ever put in. If you hit 60%, you'd be profitable.
Right.
And so to me, I don't like kind of how you said you start mixing different teams. I've heard some of the guys that are professional and stuff, they'll put 2 teams out. But when you start putting 3 and 4 and stuff out, what happens, like you said, you may win, you may not have won the league you wanted to win. Right. The next thing you know, it's just really hard to be profitable, or at least to track if you're profitable.
Sure.
Whereas 1 team, 2 teams, you know what happens, and then you kind of go from there. So that's my take. I like to have one team, also a tournament team if I put team into tournaments, but I just think it's easier to track and you start getting spread thin. I like the concept of having 2 or 3 studs. TK kind of hit like tonight. James Harden is kind of, the guy that probably, if you're going to pay for, a lot of people are going to pay for James Harden tonight. It'd be nice to have James Harden in a few different combinations so that you had James Harden, and if you had him with a dud, you also had him with a great guy, so you cash no matter what. But again, you may only hit 50% of your tickets that way, and your goal is to hit 60%. So I'm a one lineup guy.
Okay, that's good to know.
What about you, TK? How many lineups are you putting in these multipliers?
The multiplier ones, I generally do about the same team once I can kind of get comfortable on the specific one that I'm going to go with for that night, because I'll kind of sit there for a couple hours and tweak it until I kind of get across one that I like. I think, honestly, the way that I would approach this question, it's going to depend on how much of your bankroll you're going to put in play. Because if you're not going to put a lot of bankroll in play, then I think the 1 or 2 team strategy is the way to go. But if you're going to put, just say like you have $100 and you're going to put all 100 of that in play, you're going to want to mix up teams, because it's kind of like making a parlay. Like say you went to Vegas and just say, like, for instance, tonight.
Or Wendover.
Yeah, or Wendover. Just say hypothetically you like the Raptors -6 versus Memphis, and just say like you thought that was the lock of the day. We'll say you put them on all 4 of your different parlays. We'll say the Memphis either beats them or they cover that 6. Well, now all your tickets are dead. And I think that's the problem if you put, like, say, one or two teams out there and you have your whole bankroll on the line. That's the problem with that strategy is if they bust, then you're bust on the site versus if you're mixing and matching. So I think it really depends on how much of money that you put in play in terms of the strategy that you're going to want to take with that.
That's a good point, and I think what even led me to do that, I think, is that it was on a big Wednesday, and it was like a ton of players, and I just couldn't really decide like who I liked better, and so I was kind of like, Vucevic against a crappy Nuggets team, that's a good play. And then I had like Millsap against a crappy Lakers team, that's a good play. It's like, okay, who do I play? Like I like both of them, and like their money, their price was about the same. So it was kind of like, I'll just put them on this team and this guy on the other team. So I think that's what led me to do that. But then like this weekend, Friday and Saturday, I played one lineup across all my teams and ended up losing both nights just because like kind of like Rocky said, it was just kind of a weird weekend. And so I was kind of like, gosh, like what strategy is the best? So it's good to get that feedback.
I think, what I would say against building the multiple teams too is, like you said, at the end of the day, what you're going to have is you're going to have a few players that you really, really like, and you're going to combination them with different players. And so if those three players bust, if James Harden busts tonight, you're still in a bad spot no matter what, no matter how many different combinations you have. And so when you start like keying three players that you like, let's say Harden and let's say Dwight, let's say people thought Harden and Dwight were the sure things tonight, and they did as many combinations as they could as them, because Harden and Dwight eat up so much of your salary, or whatever combination eats up enough of your salary, the combination, like, you're kind of limited on how many players you can actually go like different ways with. Right. And so I just think that two teams is definitely something I've heard of and people be successful with. But I think one team a lot of times is what you'll see a lot of guys do. At least the professionals, that are putting out a lot of money. So
well, they're called professionals for a reason. So
you're right. Yeah, you're right. And the tournaments, when you hit tournaments and stuff, I have however many lineups you use, it doesn't, it just matters. But I have seen one technique that people use in tournaments is I've seen people go into a $2 tournament, $5 tournament, and even a $12 tournament, and they'll give you X amount of entries. And so let's say you could enter your team in 20 times. Well, somebody will put the exact same team in 20 times, and it's called a train. And so what happens is if your team cashes on that given day, you cash 20 times in the tournament, whatever like the slot you run into. And so you'll see that happen a lot. That's probably one thing that I don't like about DraftKings that I liked a lot about Draft Street was DraftKings, a lot of these bigger like numbered 50-50s, they're multiple entries. Right. And so one thing I saw this weekend was you're going against the pros or whatever, and they have 10 teams in a 50-50. And so at the end of the day, you have to beat that team 10 times to cash your ticket. Right. And so one thing I probably learned over the last week and a half on DraftKings was I try to avoid those multiple entry ones, because when you're going against the pros who have a very good chance of beating you, I don't want to play them 10 times. I only want to play them once in a 50-50.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so I don't know how much I like the multiple entry 50-50s.
And Rocky, what kind of ways do you build your lineups? Are you kind of, pick a couple guys you really like and then are kind of building it around them?
Yeah, I'd always try to find a couple guys I really, really like, along with a couple of value guys. On big nights, the value guys seem to be a lot easier to find. On smaller nights, not so much. And just kind of go off of that. And just kind of look into things. You guys watch a lot of games. So, like, Dirk tonight, for me, was a good play. His numbers have been pretty bad. Like, not bad, but not exceptional. And he was at, like, $6,900 on DraftKings, which is as low as you'll find him. But if you look at his last 3 games where his numbers were pretty low, he had only played, like, 24 minutes in those because they've been blowing teams out. And so, yeah, I think people seeing that. And then if you look at the tournaments, Dirk was only owned in 5% of the teams in tournaments.
That's great. So then if he does do well, then you have a huge leg up.
Right, you have a huge leg up. And so I think a lot of people, kind of research numbers alone. But people that watch games and stuff like that, that's kind of the thing that separates stats from people that just watch games, is they kind of understand why Dirk only had 14 points and 4 rebounds or whatever. And so those are kind of the methods I use to try to build a team. But at the end of the day, it's just like everything else. Things happen. Like last weekend, I mean, it was crazy how many blowouts there have been, not only last weekend, just throughout this season, which completely affect everything.
Yeah.
It's been a lot of blowouts. I mean, you just have so many bad teams. Philly, Denver's been getting blown out.
Yeah.
There's just been a lot of, and early on, the NBA is always a little different, but there's just been a ton of blowouts.
Yeah.
Not so much tonight. There's a lot of good games going tonight. And, early part of the NBA season will be like that sometimes.
So, hey, one more question before we move on, just so I can continue to suck your knowledge away. But is there a website or a blog site that you actually do research on, or is it just from hands-on experience with DraftKings?
I mean, obviously Twitter is probably like everybody's biggest tool at this point. There's some really, really good follows on Twitter. I use RotoWorld to get player news. But then I use a lot of the tools that ESPN provides with their player rater. I don't look at the player rater, obviously, but I go to the team stats and just kind of try to research everything I can to try to help me make the best decision on what's going on. And it always helps. Twitter is a bad thing too, though, because last week I put a monster squad out, and about 5 minutes before lineups locked, somebody had tweeted or retweeted something about Mike Scott starting for the Atlanta Hawks. He was minimum value, and he was starting. And it was a really reliable guy that I've always followed, and he retweeted it. So immediately I went in, rebuilt the lineup, because I was like $200 away from having the lineup I wanted. Well, I put Mike Scott in. That gave me the lineup I want. Everybody in my squad blew up, and Mike Scott took a 0.
Yeah.
So I went from 300. That's what I scored, a 300 that night.
Wow.
And Mike Scott, if he would have played and started like I took the information as, my squad could have looked like 320, probably 320 points, which would have won me lots of tournaments.
Right.
And so that's the one thing that's probably the worst is there's always misinformation going on out there. Like today, right before lineups lock, Kevin and Martin and Corey Brewer are questionable because of the flu, which is 5 minutes before the lineups locked. And I had Brewer and I had Martin both in a lineup. And so I had to take 3 hours of research and build a team in 5 minutes.
Right.
And throw it away. And so that's definitely the hard part. But again, the more you research and the more you kind of watch games, the more you can do that in 5 minutes versus a player like TK kind of refers to him as fish that don't have that knowledge. So.
Right.
And TK, what kind of ways are you using? What tools are you using for your teams?
Yeah, I actually use all the exact same tools he used that he just brought up, that he uses Twitter, RotoWorld, and all the information you can get off ESPN. But then that's when I balance that along with just my general knowledge of knowing the player's strengths and weaknesses and, like who they're going up against that night. And so I kind of just put it all together. I would say I'm not the best source for, like, getting guys, say, like what Rocky brought up, the Kevin Martin, Corey Brewer thing. That's not something I'm ever going to be on top of. So I'm kind of just going to go with something and just go with it and hope it works out. So that's probably the downside to my strategy.
One thing I noticed that I needed to look out for too is, and that's what kind of bit me in the butt this last weekend, was like when LaMarcus Aldridge didn't play, and I was like, okay, like who is the for sure guy who's actually going to replace some of those minutes, or at least replace some of that production, And so the obvious guy was Dame Lillard, like he's going to have to play big, but then like who is actually going to play the minutes at the PF spot, And so then when I played Thomas Robinson in all three of my lineups, and we all know that didn't work out, so I was like. But in the back of my head, I knew, even though Kamin's ceiling was probably a little lower, like I knew Kamin was still going to come out because he's already been playing even when LaMarcus Aldridge was there. And then he's going to probably grab a couple extra minutes just because LA's gone. And so I went with Kamin in like one of the lineups with Thomas Robinson, and then Thomas Robinson across the board just because he's like, the obvious PF choice there. But then when after it didn't work out, I kind of sat there and pondered like, okay, even when LA's there, like it's actual Joel Freeland is the guy who comes off the bench typically, with Chris Kaman. And so I was kind of like, like mad at myself because I was like, gosh dang it, like you should have known that kind of thing. And so I was kind of like, reverting, I guess, back to like thinking about like who is almost not the guy who's going to replace him, but it's the guy who's replacing the production. And then the obvious answer was Dame Lillard, so.
And so to kind of hit on you, that to me is the big difference between FanDuel and DraftKings. And that's one thing that kind of has me thinking that I might try FanDuel out. There's a lot of things I love about DraftKings, starting with their app, and just it's user-friendly, except FanDuel, they lock lineups all across the board at 5 o'clock. And so even your 8:30 games are locked. I was on the other side of the coin from you on the Thomas Robinson thing because I had Thomas Robinson in my lineup. I got some Twitter information about a half an hour prior to the game starting, and so I made the switch to Myers Leonard, which saved my day.
Yeah, totally.
And so that's the good side of DraftKings, is that I was able to make that switch. I was able to save my day and be profitable. The bad side of DraftKings is I had to be on Twitter at 8 o'clock at night to check that.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things, Draft Street I love because they locked at 5 o'clock, and to me that gives a competitive edge to people who have done research all day and kind of kept up on just basketball in general, because what happens is if you wanted to take a roll of the dice with Thomas Robinson, you may have been one of 5% of people that had him, and so if he did play and had a good game, you probably would have did really well if you were in a tournament with him. And so it's kind of like it gives you the competitive edge to kind of know who's going to play ahead of time, 3 hours ahead, or if a guy's questionable, do you roll the dice on him and put him in your lineup, or do you just not play him and play it conservative? So there's a little bit more strategic planning on stuff like that, where there's not with DraftKings because they have the late swap and you can make those things. But at the same point, we all have relationships where it's like, do you want to spend your whole night on Twitter
right
to try to, you know what I mean?
Right, totally.
Not that I don't want to.
Hard.
Yeah.
Yeah,
sit in my
just,
lineup and go to bed. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. And so, I mean...
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Finish up.
Oh, no, what I was just going to say is I actually love it when the power forwards, like the star ones, are out, because to me, that is where the real basketball knowledge comes out, because at that point, then you've got to understand if that team's going to play a small lineup, a big lineup, and that's where guys like the Myers Leonards, the Thomas Robinsons, like the difference, not only because of Twitter, but the difference of making that kind of switch in terms of knowing if Myers Leonards is even going to come into that game. That's where the basketball knowledge comes in, and I think that's where just understanding the game and watching these teams and seeing their rotations, I think that's where you can win and lose these leagues also.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, you have to have all the Twitter and Roto World stuff, but nothing beats watching the games and then just kind of forming your own opinions on things, and then really getting to see who, like TK was saying, who's playing, and when they do go small, how do they play? How do they play with, with Kaman in there for Portland in Myles Leonard's case? And, you just can't get that on Twitter necessarily. I mean, you get so much more. I just mean when you're watching the games, that's, where that knowledge comes from. In 5 minutes, you got to put something together. You're able to do that.
Right. It's kind of like the eye test, It's like you got your stats, the guy's stats, but then you get the eye test too. Like, does he pass your eye test? Like, you watch certain players and you're like, oh man, he's so badass in the real life to watch. But then you look at his stat, you're like, oh, his stats kind of are mediocre, So it's kind of that catch-22 there. I'm trying to think of an example. But
the example I can kind of think of is we've all hit on Chris Copeland 1,000 times.
Right.
We've all watched Chris Copeland play, and so at the beginning of the season, you have a big competitive edge over the people that don't know much about basketball or are new to the fantasy game, because Chris Copeland starting at small forward is not a good thing for the Indiana Pacers record. But
he's gonna slang it
when he's $3,600. As soon as me, you, TK, or Chris see that, we see a guy who's going to get 30 shots up if he can, which is a big deal in fantasy because DraftKings and FanDuel have no efficiency like Doc on it. Like if he misses a shot, it doesn't hurt him. So at the end of the day, a guy like Nick Young and Chris Copeland, if you can get them for cheap like Nick Young tonight, you're at least guaranteed a guy who's going to try to score 30 points that's going to help your team. And so That's another thing with just knowing the game. I think it helps out a lot to know that Chris Copeland's a gunner and things like that. There's no stats that can show that because he doesn't get enough time when the team's healthy.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good point.
And, speaking of guys who try to get 30 every night, Kobe Bryant has been catching some serious backlash for breaking the record for most shot attempts, or most misses, which is pretty lame. Kobe's a bucket getter, and that's what you want your bucket getters to do, and he's one of the best to ever do it. Obviously, I'm a Laker homer, so you could come up with a critique on him, and I'd probably defend the other way. But what are you guys thinking of all the criticism that Kobe's got so far?
I'm going to take this one because I thought it was really funny. To me, it's almost like a trophy that he won because he's been in the league 19 years, and he's been a starter on an NBA team for 18 of those years, and he's been to the playoffs every year, deep into the playoffs. So I think it's more a reflection of a successful career. You know what I mean? Like, not very many players have played 19 years, and the few that have, like a KG or like a Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, like those guys are bigs, and so they shoot a higher percentage. Like Michael Jordan didn't play for 19 years. All those great, like Jerry West, he didn't even play close to that. So like, there's a lot of guys that just didn't play as long, and if they were in the league that long, they would have chucked up just as many bricks. So I think you just have to look at the career field goal percentage. Like Kobe's a pretty decent career field goal percentage guy. I think he's like at like 44%. And don't quote me on that. I'm not looking, but I think that's about where it's at. And so I mean, like 44 for a 2 card isn't that bad. It's just about the longevity to me. So I don't know how you guys feel.
TK, what's your take on that?
I'm just looking it up as he was talking. He is a career 45% shooter. Mm-hmm. I would just say one other thing to add to what Rory just said is that he's also going up against the best defender on the opposite team. So that definitely is something that you have to factor in. Yeah. And then when you look at just the amount of points that he scored in his career, when you kind of put the two together, that's where the thing in general is kind of a joke, really, that it was even brought up to begin with.
Yeah. Well, he's just such a polarizing guy, and so anytime, he's so successful, and so people who don't like him can take a knock at him, they always do it.
I think to me, a lot of the backlash he's getting right now is just because the Golden State game Sunday night, he literally, it was 1v5.
It was
he wasn't
terrible.
Looking. Yeah. It was like he wasn't even looking to do anything but shoot. He would dribble for 24 seconds if he had to get a shot off. And the Lakers, body posture around him, they weren't even cutting or moving. They were just standing and watching him play. Mm-hmm. So I think some of that's probably why it's so excessive at this point. Mm-hmm. I'm cool with him breaking the record. I'd have no problem with him breaking that record just because, like you said, it's a longevity thing. It's also a thing right now where he's on, in my opinion, probably the second worst team in the NBA. Mm-hmm. And so if he was doing this and he had a team, even like last year's with Powell and a team that was at least capable of the 8 seed, I would be a lot more critical of him. But right now, the Lakers are a joke.
Mm-hmm. And they are a joke. And you see, TK and I talked about this on our drive back probably for about 2 hours from Wendover, from getting our ass kicked. What kind of teams, would you like to see Kobe on? Because, the Lakers, they're going nowhere, and there's no easy way out of the situation that they're in. And eventually, when they go 2-15, 2-20, or whatever they end up at in 20 games, and you start to see Kobe, mannerisms start to change, his body language change, and then everyone around him, like Rocky was saying, no one cuts. It's just standing around watching him. Will Kobe lift his trade clause? And if he does, what teams would you like to see him on? What about you, Rory?
Well, to that question, I don't know if they're ever going to trade him, or if they would even attempt to. But I think, even to more of that question, and kind of back to the Warriors game, is that I think Kobe's constantly sending messages to his teammates. He's such a cerebral player. I think that whole game, I was watching that too, and I've watched pretty much every Laker game this year, and he hadn't done that yet. He shot a lot, but you're right. There was one point where he missed a 3, and it gets tipped out. He shoots a 2-pointer. It gets tipped out to him. Shoots a 2-pointer. He misses it. It gets tipped out to him again. He shoots another 3, and then he finally hits it. But it was like there was no one else on the court. It was like he was by himself. And I think that was just like, you know what, guys, we're 1-8, and like you guys suck, and like you're not bringing it. And I'm telling you, like right now, in front of a national stage, that like I'm not cool with you guys. And so I think that's what a lot of that is about. Because I mean, he's so cerebral, and it's like, anytime you watch him play, like, you know, he's thinking constantly and processing information as he goes. But anyways, besides that point, like, as far as a team trading for him, I think the only teams that would make sense to make trades are teams with expiring contracts that are going for championships. You know, I can't. But even then, like, I just don't think there is even a sliver of a chance that he gets traded. But I don't know. What do you think, Rock?
I don't know any of the numbers, Dill. I'm not good with the expiring contracts, and knowing that TK is probably a little better than that than any of us. But I do know, just if I could put him on one team right now that could put them over the top, and it makes a lot of sense, it's the Memphis Grizzlies. Mm-hmm. I think they have, you know, obviously Zebo and Marc Gasol, it might be the best front court in the league, and they don't have a perimeter scorer. Mike Conley's a great point guard, but other than that, they don't have anybody that can get their own shot. They gave away Rudy Gay, and I mean, I wasn't opposed to them giving Rudy Gay away, but I think Kobe's what they need, and I just think that makes a lot of sense from the land there. Whether that could work financially or whether it would ever work, I don't know. But the Grizzlies, if it financially could work, I would love to see the Grizzlies do it, because I think they could win an NBA championship if they made that move.
They have one of the best records in the NBA right now, don't they?
They do, and I know that it's like every year they're really, really solid. Yeah. And this year they're probably better than the past years as far as record goes. I just don't think this team can win an NBA championship without a perimeter scorer. I just, you know, Conley's a great point guard, but if you look in the West, it's a wash at that position. No matter who he plays in any series, he's not an upgrade over CP3. Westbrook is healthy if they make the playoffs. Or you go down the list of great point guards in the league right now, and he's not an upgrade over those guys. And so their front line can only do so much, but if they can't hit shots, they just can't. I don't see them winning a championship. And so to me, obviously, adding the ultimate shot maker in Kobe is huge and would put them over the top. That kind of goes back to the last question CH asked of the backlash. Is Kobe going to adapt to a system like that and play and go, you know, 19 points a game, 5 rebounds, 6 assists? Could he do that for a team? I know he can, but is his alpha male gene going to let him?
Right.
Yeah.
I think he's thinking 25 would do it, and everyone else can sacrifice.
Yeah.
We'll build around my 25, and then you guys do your thing.
That's exactly
what about you,
backlash,
TK? What kind of teams would you like to see him on?
I mean, I might have the most biased answer out of any of us, but I would love to see him on the Sacramento Kings. I think that's a team that could also use a perimeter score. Ben McLemore at least has showed signs of at least being a capable shooter, but I would love to see him in Sacramento. And there's been situations late in games, like for instance that Phoenix game where Rudy Gay was having just a horrible night.
Yeah, I remember.
Cousins had fouled out. Yeah. That would have been a perfect spot where they could have used a Kobe Bryant to try and, you know, basically hit the shot to win the game. So I think that would be a team. I think that would hurt him a little bit defensively, obviously, because Ben McLemore actually is a pretty decent defender. But I do think late game situations it could help them. So I don't know, you know, where would that take them? I don't know. I think at least it would be a lock for the playoffs, but I don't know. Does that make them a contender? I'm not quite sure on that. They might need one more piece even after that even.
Yeah. Well, and one thing we need to keep in mind here too is who are they going to give back in that trade, you know, like to get Kobe Bryant, the Grizzlies are going to have to trade Vince Carter, Quincy Poindexter, Courtney Lee, and Mike Conley. You know what I mean? Like it's going to...
No, actually, I disagree with that. I don't think they're going to have to match the talent of a Kobe Bryant. They're just going to need to give up assets that would suit the Lakers, because what you got to remember is when the Lakers are trading Kobe Bryant, they're basically trading that contract away. They're not looking to... You're never going to get equal value back for Kobe Bryant based off that contract he makes.
Yeah, that's
true.
So
the asset that you're getting in that trade is you're getting rid of that contract to be able to build your own team from scratch.
Right. It's more like getting picks.
And then you're just guaranteed that top 5 pick that they need to get. And
They're
I just hate to
guaranteed that
see him.
anyways.
I mean, they are, but in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, they sneak enough wins. There's still a lot of bad teams in the NBA, and I definitely still agree with him there. They're still probably near the bottom. Definitely solidifying that, wouldn't be a bad thing.
His contract's horrible. I mean, getting rid of that alone is that's an asset
That's
right
asset.
there, because
Yep.
it's totally handcuffed the team, and things couldn't have played out any worse for the Lakers than they did last summer when they missed on Love, when they missed on LeBron, when they missed on Melo.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everything that they'd been doing for the last 2 years was for this summer, and now they've got an aging veteran that's the highest paid player in the league, possibly. Is that?
He is, yeah. And then
He is.
Amari's
Oh, yeah.
second, Joe Johnson's
Amari's
third.
right up there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know. I mean, the backlash is going to come from, like, the Lakers faithful. He sells tickets. He sells jerseys. He does all those things. And so, I mean, that would probably be the biggest obstacle in trading him, other than finding a team that wants him, to be honest with you.
Right.
Definitely.
The thing about it, too, though, is he's an expiring next year, so...
Yeah.
24
That's what I'm saying.
mil.
Yeah.
If the Grizzlies could make it work, I know they're going to have to pay luxury tax, and nobody wants to do that, but are you really trying to win the championship?
Right.
You know what I mean? I just feel like they have a squad that can do it, and this could be their year. Marc Gasol, I believe, is a free agent next year. Is that?
Yep.
I think he is. So it's like, this might be your last run at it.
Yeah.
Go for it.
I agree. They
So-
look really good. Mark's having a career year. Zebo looks the same, and he's always
Yeah.
awesome. Courtney Lee is actually providing pretty good two-guard minutes. They're holding it down pretty well. And speaking of, in the daily leagues, looks like half the Memphis Grizzlies team is out. Did anybody play Vince Carter tonight?
I did.
I played Poindexter instead.
Nice.
I think I have both. I have so many teams out there, but I do have both. More Vince Carter though.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. But CH, what do you think, man? Do you think who's another team that they could potentially trade him to?
You hear the Knicks, and I just don't really. I know he's probably gonna love being in New York. Phil Jackson, the media is gonna love that. They're just never gonna win over there either. I mean, I guess they have a little more money freed up. You can end up shipping Amari's expiring, I guess, with that. I mean that's what you hear the most from what it sounds like. But I'd love to see him win. If I'm a huge Kobe fan, bigger Laker fan though, I want to see. I just hate seeing the Lakers just being a doormat, and the Clippers. Clippers are struggling this year, but they're definitely the best team in LA.
Mm-hmm.
And just Clipper fans just bug me in general. There's no Clipper fans 5 years ago. I don't want to hear it.
Yeah. Well, and then on the flip side of that coin, CH, is Kobe, he's a legacy guy, at this point it's all about legacy for him. Is he willing to even be traded? You know what I mean? Does he want to be that guy who was on one team? Even Jordan didn't do that. You know what I mean? So...
I guess it just comes down to, whether he wants to win or not. Because he's not going to win his next 2 years.
No, he's not.
I think that question actually poses, a lot of different questions, in the sense that, A, does he want to be traded? Does he want to stay with the Lakers? But B is, if he's traded, and he's traded to the Knicks for his last 2 years, because he says he's not playing after his contract, whether that happens or not, I don't know. But if he gets traded to the Knicks, is it really about winning at that point?
No, it's not. No.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? So it's to me, it's if he finds a way to get to a contending team, not even the Grizzlies, just a team that has a chance to win, that's kind of the Kobe we all view him as the competitive, I want to win.
Yeah.
But there's also the bad side of the Kobe, the flip side of the coin that people always complain about, is the Kobe that just wants to shoot and put up numbers. And so to me, if he got his way out of LA and went to New York, or went to a team that's just terrible, I think it fuels a lot of the haters that just say, you know what, the guy really doesn't care about it. He just wants to score, and he wants numbers and those kind of things.
Yeah, I think he wants it all. You know what I mean? He
Yeah.
wants to win, and he wants to be the guy. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's his thing. I think that's why Powell fits so perfectly next to him, because
Right.
Powell is just I don't give a shit. I'm just a really nice guy who happens to be really good at basketball. He just, he just didn't care about being the number one guy, and I think that's why Powell fits so great, and that's why him and Shaq could just never get together, because Shaq's ego and on top of Kobe's ego is just crazy.
Two alpha dogs.
Two alpha dogs, exactly. It's an alpha dog.
It's why Chris Bosh worked with LeBron and Dwayne Wade.
Exactly. What's cool too to take that kind of alpha dog conversation is you look at like KD and Westbrook. Like those guys are both alpha dogs, but they like love each other and they play amazing ball together. So I think it can be done. Like you can get along with another alpha dog, but even on the argument like Kevin Durant, you could kind of make an argument he's not really an alpha dog. Like he's just really good.
Yeah. I think he's got an alpha dog. I just think in general, I think Kevin Durant seems like a good human being. And I'm not saying that Kobe and these guys aren't, but totally Kevin Durant seems very genuine. It seems like he can handle the Westbrook situation better than Kobe, better than any of these other guys could, because he just seems, I don't know, more of a leader, I guess. I don't know. To me, Durant could go for 21 night if it meant Westbrook being happy.
Definitely.
I agree. You're totally right.
And what about, let's move on to another player kind of in a similar situation. Obviously doesn't have the crazy contract, is Rajon Rondo in Boston. Mm-hmm. Do you see Boston, making a move? I mean, to me, I'm a huge Rondo fan, even though he's a Celtic. Yeah, just kind of watching, the big three with Rondo in there, battling when it was the Lakers. I was loving Ray Allen and Rondo combination. Always been a huge KG guy. But do you see the Celtics trading him? I mean, I'd like to see Rondo win too. I want to see these great players be in good situations, and so you can watch them play at the highest level, and that's in the playoffs. And, you want to build your team in Boston, but is it with Rondo?
I think they tried to trade him the last 3 years. I think that they always deny the rumors, but when the rumor keeps popping up, it's kind of where there's smoke, there's fire type deal. Mm-hmm. And so, I don't know. I think they've tried, and if they get a chance and they get a deal that's sweet enough, I think he's out the door. I don't think you draft Marcus Smart unless you have some sort of ulterior motive there.
Right.
He's almost a clone. I think Rondo's twice the player he'll ever be. But it's like, from a skill set, they're almost similar players.
What do you think?
What do you think, TK?
Yeah.
I'd like to see them move him. Looking at their 3-6, they're obviously going to be much more closer to winning the lottery than they are making the playoffs. So it reminds me a little bit of when the 76ers traded Drew Holiday, and it's for the same reasons that you're not going to probably win a championship if he's your best player. He's a guy that can be I guess I'll take that back. I think he can be the best player on the team, but he's got to be around a team full of like scorers, to where his attributes basically show up. Mm-hmm. And so without that, I don't know. It's just hard to find a home where he would be able to go to where they'd be able to get the assets back, because his situation obviously is a lot different than Kobe Bryant's when it comes to the contract part of it. And so
he has a very affordable
like
contract.
Rocky brought up, that they've tried to move him, and I think a lot of it just has to do with what they're looking for, and it could just be the Celtics, slightly even overvaluing him in terms of what they think they should be getting back for him, and I think that could have been what's bit them in the ass as far as trying to trade him. So yeah. I think I'd love to see him get moved by the deadline. I think they're going to make a conservative effort to move him, but I think they're going to come across the same problems that they had the last couple of years trying to move him.
Yeah. I think like the reason he hasn't been moved, and I think you're 100% correct, kind of both of you with the smoke and the fire, and then like the asking too much it's literally just that. Like I think Danny Ainge is a really smart guy, and he's just not budging. He knows he has a great player, and he knows he has a player that a lot of people want on a very affordable contract, which is one of the most, best luxuries you can absolutely have as an NBA GM. And so I just don't think he's budging, and that's why I think he hasn't been traded yet. But to that, I mean, to your question, CH, I think if he was to be traded, I see Daryl Morey in the distance, waving over at him, hey man, come on over, So I think it'd be like the Rockets. I think it'd be a great fit next to those guys, even though the fact that James Harden loves to have the ball in his hands a lot, and that's pretty much Rondo just has the ball in his hands the whole game. I think that might be a little bit of an issue, but as far as just having pure shooters and then like one big to throw alley-oops to, I think would make a lot of sense. And he would also help with a lot of that perimeter defense. And, I hate to keep bringing up the Kings, even though I do like the Kings, but I think he would fit well there too, because he's such a distributor, and he's got two huge scorers over there. And he, I do like what Collison's been doing, but, Rondo's a Hall of Fame player. So I think that two interesting fits there.
Yeah,
Hey, Rocky. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
You know, I was just gonna hit on. You know, Rondo's just a leader. You know, you kind of see him play. He's, you know, to kind of compare him to D Rose. You know, injury wise, you know, Rondo's is. I'm just meaning Rondo's really injury prone. Derrick Rose has been really injury prone, and you see Rondo kind of fighting through his injuries, and you see Derrick Rose definitely take his time anytime anything comes up.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about Rondo is he'll put a sling on, he'll put a cast on, and it doesn't change his effort at all. And so I definitely want to see him get traded, especially because I don't like the Celtics, and they would be in tank mode just like we are as a Laker fan. Shouldn't say we, but I did.
What's amazing about Rondo too is like you watch those guys play, and they have a couple good players. I like Solinger, I like Olynyk, but like they don't have a lot of talent. Jeff Green's pretty good too, but as far as like how he's leading the league in assists right now, and it's like if you look at that roster, it's amazing that he's leading the league in assists because there's not a lot of shot makers on that team, and like you watch him play, and it's unreal like how a guy who just has a pretty mediocre jump shot can still just like find the attention at the right time just to clear a little bit of space to make that pass. Like he's really, really special, and I think he might be the best player or best passer in the NBA, if not definitely one of the top.
I think he's the best passer. I mean, I like what you're saying with the Celtics roster is spot on. I think Danny Ainge kind of outsmarted himself with that. I mean, he was really high on Avery Bradley. They just have brought in a lot of pieces that are kind of like, at best case scenario, they're Denver Nuggets type deal where they've got all these pieces that are above average.
Right.
And like you said, Rondo is like, he's great. Whoever, he could definitely put a team over the top. I think maybe even more so than Kobe at this point because you know what you're going to get with Rondo. You know that you're going to get a guy who's looking to facilitate, whereas Kobe, he'd really have to change the way he's played for the last 19 years in the league.
Hey, do you guys think, I'm going to throw this one to Rocky, and then you guys can answer also. Do you think he could save Oklahoma City if he was traded there? Say they did like Kendrick Perkins and a couple first-rounders?
Or like Reggie Jackson before he...
Well, he's an expiring contract, so I don't think that they're going to really view him as the asset that he really is, because they probably want to open up the door for Marcus Smart, you know, when he comes back. So I don't know if Reggie Jackson really would fit well. I think from a value part, that would be where Reggie Jackson would need to get thrown in there, but I could see, the money would work if you did Kendrick Perkins' expiring contract and a couple, say, probably have to throw in at least a few.
So what are you doing with Westbrook? Is Westbrook there still?
The two guard?
But yeah, that's the thing. Is do you think do they have any shot of
I don't think that could work simply because if you look at Rondo from a standpoint of like kind of the bad side of him is you've always heard like they were able to win it with them because they had Garnett and Pierce and Ray Allen in the locker room to kind of like tone him down because he was just almost an asshole, really.
Yeah, he's kind of a psycho.
And so, and he's really stubborn and all these things you read about him. Again, this is just me reading articles, not like I know him, but you add that into the mix with like a very combustible Russell Westbrook, and again, not a great shooter Russell Westbrook like Rondo. I don't see that happening, but I will say this, and I've said this for years, and me and TK had this debate probably 3 years ago before Steph hit it big. Steph and Westbrook, or Steph and Durant,
or Durant, yeah,
or Rondo and Durant, that's that combination works. And I know the Westbrook thing works. They've had a lot of success with it, but I just think Westbrook's meant to be like an alpha dog on his own team, and the team's built around him. If Durant had a legitimate point guard that looked to facilitate or could stretch the court a little bit for him, I think he would. It's scary to think, but I think he could put up even bigger numbers because I've seen Durant go for like 12 straight points and then Westbrook not give him the ball for the next 5 times down the court.
And you see Durant's personality kind of just be okay with it, like you said earlier, Rocky. Kind of just be doing whatever it takes to kind of make Russ happy, you know?
Yeah, and so that kind of where we talk about the Rondo fitting into that, Rondo could definitely make Durant happy and a better player than he already is. I don't know how that would work with Westbrook, though, because Westbrook wants the ball, and you're probably taking two of the most hard-headed alpha male point guards from that aspect in the league and putting them together in the same backcourt. I don't know about that. I don't know if it works.
I guess I feel it could work just because he doesn't need to score, being Rondo. And so I feel they each will still get enough shots. So I'm not really concerned about Durant, more of Westbrook, what you keep bringing up. And so I feel that it could work just because I think he would be more than okay with having games, say, where he had a line of like 8 points, like 18 dimes, and like 6 rebounds. I think
he would be
with that kind of line.
He would be absolutely thrilled with that line. I mean, I don't think anything changes for him. I think he would be absolutely happy about the situation and everything. But just being a point guard myself, I know that a lot of times, like, Westbrook is a point guard. I don't think he's a scorer, but he's played point guard now in the league for how many years? Taking the ball out of a point guard's hands is like a disrespect to them.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's like he's not going to want to move off the ball. I've never heard of a point guard that wanted to move off the ball.
Right.
And so you're taking, an all-NBA first, second team player at his best and saying, you know what, you're no longer our point guard, we're going to move you off the ball. I just don't see Westbrook being okay with that.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Roy? Do you see that one working?
No, not at all. The only reason is because of, like you talked about, TK, it's shot distribution, but it's also, like Rocky just hit on the head, it's who has the rock in their hands, and Rondo needs the ball in his hands. And I mean, point guards need the ball in their hands, you know what I mean? Like, that's just how it goes. That's why the ball's in their hands, because they're the best with it. And so I think it wouldn't work. I think you'd have to get rid of Westbrook, and I don't know if they ever will unless, say, KD leaves. But I want to kind of go back a little bit, too, and you said that Westbrook's not a good shooter, and he's one of the best mid-range shooters in the NBA.
Right.
He's not a great deep-range shooter, but he's one of the most efficient and prolific mid-range shooters in the NBA. So
yeah, but I'm talking about from like a
knockdown
point guard that
shooter.
needs to if he's going to be off the ball, he's not going to be able to spot up for 18-foot jumpers. He's going to have to be able to knock
Steph
down
Curry.
open shots.
Yeah.
And so to me, if the plan was to move Westbrook and build around Rondo and Durant, I could totally see it happening, and I could see the Thunder actually benefit from that in the long run. I wouldn't be opposed to seeing Rondo, Jackson, and Durant stay and find a good deal or a place to move Westbrook to. I really think I think Westbrook's really underrated. After watching him play, I thought that when he was at Boston College, and he's super athletic. He shoots the ball well.
Oh, Jackson?
Reggie Jackson.
Yeah.
He's just a great player, and so to me, I think Westbrook would be the odd man out, not because he's not a good player, but because of the way the team's built and the other pieces that they already have.
Yeah. Well, and when they all come back, they're going to have kind of a sticky situation on their hands with the whole starting situation, because Reggie Jackson's proven that he obviously is a really good NBA starter.
Right.
He's a legit starting point guard.
Yeah, I mean, and I think, he plays pretty good two-guard too, and I think ever since his confidence went up, it's really shown that he is a true baller. And I think if you take him off the bench, he's going to be gone next year. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like Harden. It's like you need guys need to play me, or like, obviously he got traded, but in this case, Reggie Jackson I don't know how long he'll put up with being a role player, especially when
Reggie Jackson's getting paid next year. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, no, he's getting paid. I mean, he deserves it. He's a really good player. I mean, like, you see the numbers he's putting up in everyone's absence. He's putting up like 25 points and 7 assists a night. Like, that's just every bit as good as Westbrook puts up, so it's pretty crazy. He does it in a lot different way. He does it in more of a paced game. He does it like a lot of pick and roll jump shots and kind of like fadeaway threes. I see he shoots a lot. He's a lot more like change of pace guy compared to Westbrook, where he just balls to the wall. You can't stop him.
Yeah. He reminds me a little bit of Bledsoe. He really does.
Tax the basket up those pick and rolls.
Yeah, and they just Jackson is super athletic.
Mm-hmm.
I tell you what, I'd like to see that. I mean, I'd like to see Rondo over there. I want to see Oklahoma City win. And, they just, from the Harden trade to injuries, something just seems to bite them in the ass every year. And I'm curious to see what kind of changes they make, or if they do.
I'd much rather see Westbrook and Durant win together in Oklahoma City than see a trade, just in my opinion.
I guess the whole reason I brought that up, because knowing how competitive Westbrook is, I think if you sat him down and say, hey, look, if we brought in Rondo, you at least have a shot to make the playoffs this year, versus if we don't, you're going to be in the lottery. And knowing how competitive he is, I find a hard time believing he wouldn't be on board with it.
Mm-hmm.
I think Rory kind of hit it best with the Kobe mentality of he wants to win and he wants everything as well. And I think you could probably classify Westbrook in that too.
Definitely.
I think Westbrook wants to be 82-0 and average 65 points.
Yeah.
And so I just don't think you're going to convince him in any way that taking him off the ball, because Rondo, at the end of the day...
He doesn't think Rondo's better than him, you know?
Well, yeah, that's what you're saying. If you take Russell Westbrook off the ball, you're saying Rajon Rondo is a better point guard. And so you're taking an alpha male type guy and telling him he's not good enough. And I just see that blowing up.
Mm-hmm.
And let's switch gears here and kind of get to some players who've kind of been making huge strides. Some of them have been really, good players and are just kind of taking their games to the next level. And the main guy I want to get to is Jimmy Butler. In one of our keeper leagues, we had a guy who kept Jimmy Butler, and he changed his name to something crazy, and all of us were just giving him shit.
Jimmy Butler 2.1 or Jimmy 2.1.
And he's looking like a genius right now.
Well, you gotta
crazy
understand
to
though, he cut Rajon Rondo, I believe.
Very
too.
true.
So it's not like he made a great decision.
No.
It wasn't a great decision, but to his credit, Jimmy Butler is twice the player I projected him to be this year.
Totally
Absolutely.
agree. Totally agree.
What
I just
do
didn't
you
think he was a
think about
20-point
Jimmy?
scorer.
I like Jimmy a lot. And I remember when they had Luol Deng, me and Rocky talked numerous times that it made sense to move him because he basically can do everything that Luol Deng can and then some. So we've been advocating Jimmy Butler for a while that he needed to get more playing time and that he should have been pretty much brought up onto the scene a little bit sooner than he was. But I like Jimmy Butler a lot.
Tibbs is going to kill his career, though, man.
Gosh, I know. Dude.
Seriously, he's getting like 40, 42 minutes every single game, and it drives me nuts. Because it's like the Luol Deng. Luol had a great, start to his career. I think Jimmy Butler's potential as a player is bigger than Luol, but he may only have like a 4-year window to do this in, playing this many minutes. But last night in the Clippers game, or 2 nights ago, whenever it was, he was putting dudes in the post. He was doing everything for that team. And so I'm a Jimmy Butler fan after watching him play.
Yeah, I think the main reason for the rise of Jimmy Butler this year is just being aggressive. The king of being aggressive to me is Westbrook, maybe Kobe, but just like pure 48 minutes, never stopping being aggressive. And I think that's even helped me in my own personal basketball game, is realizing not to be passive and just constantly be aggressive and attack, because good things happen when that happens. And I just watching Jimmy Butler, it's just the same thing. I've just watched him being from kind of like a timid jump shooter, off the ball, really good defender, playing your role, to being just fuck it, I'm Jimmy Butler, I'm going getting buckets, you know what I mean? And so that's kind of what I've seen. I haven't really seen a huge improvement from what I've seen him do in the past. I've seen him make big plays in the past, and I've seen him dunk, and I've seen him steal, and I've seen him knock down some threes. But this year it just seems like he's going to the basket, and he's just attacking, and he's saying, hey, this is my team. I don't care if D Rose is hurt. I don't care if Pau Gasol's a legend is on the team. I'm just going to work. And so I think that's been the biggest rise for Jimmy Butler, in my opinion.
He's a guy who turned down, a contract extension too this year.
Yeah.
And they were reporting it was around $11 million a year, and Jimmy came out right away and said, I'm going to gamble on myself.
Yeah.
And it's really going to pay off for him, and he's another guy with Reggie Jackson that's going to get paid.
It's funny, Chris, that you say that. Is actually, I'm probably a little bit more of a college basketball guy than the rest of you guys. I know that
Absolutely.
The quality of the game is not good, but I watch a lot of basketball.
Right.
2 guys in the last 5 years that I've watched the game and just watched them in college and said, that is an NBA player, were Reggie Jackson and Jimmy Butler. They were just on a totally different level than everybody out there, but they never got any hype. I'm not going to go out and say that I projected them to be this in the NBA, because I didn't. But watching them play, I was like, how is nobody talking about these 2 players? Because you just watch them play and you're like, they were just fantastic college players, and they looked athletic enough. They just fit the bill of an NBA player, but they got overlooked for whatever reason. I don't know where. I think Jimmy Butler was second round. Reggie Jackson might have been first round, but at the end of the first round.
Very end of the first round, yeah. And Jimmy Butler was a second rounder, yeah.
Yeah, and so it's like one of those things where they just looked the part for 6 years, and NBA people missed on them. They just missed on them.
Well, and that goes back to my eye test point. Like, it was funny. I was having lunch the other day with some buddies over at one of the best sandwich joints in town, Great Harvest Bread. I'm just going to give them a shout out because they're so good. But we're sitting there and we're eating, and like we were joking about some busts in the NBA draft. And so we started going back and looking at like who were really good second round picks. And it's amazing, like, the vast amount of talent that you find in the second round. You know, like, to go back to the mid-2000s, there was, like, Paul Millsap was, like, the 50th pick. And it's like...
Gilbert Arenas,
you know, Chandler Parsons. You know,
Isaiah.
The list goes on, and it's crazy because... Nick Van Exel, you know, like, there's so many of them, dude. Like,
and other than Manu, like, all these guys, again, college careers, they were fantastic.
That's the thing about
players.
It. Yeah.
Wesley Matthews, kind of similar.
Yeah.
Totally.
And Marquette, but it's just one of those things where, I don't know, sometimes I think they outsmart themselves. Jimmy Butler is probably 6'5", and they wanted him to be 6'6.5", and so they docked him. You know what I mean? And at the end of the day, like you said, a guy can play or not, and Jimmy Butler he's just been fantastic this year.
Well, it's like Millsap in college, he led the nation in rebounding 3 years in a row. Like, how is that not guy how is he not a lottery pick? You know, like, that's a skill that translates.
But you hear undersized,
you know?
He went to La Tech,
not super athletic, played in the WAC.
And, you know, you watch him on film, he doesn't, you know, blow you away as far as athleticism. But at the end of the day, he just gets it done.
He's a baller, dude. He's just a baller.
And let's move on to the next player, a guy who had a good year last year and is really, you know, I just didn't think he would continue it, and it's Brandon Knight in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
He's averaging 18, 6, and 6 right now with 2 threes. And, you know, you watch him play, and he's another guy like Rory, like, you know, he's just aggressive. And I don't, you know, if it's just more confidence or just him finding his game, but he's really taking his game, and another guy who's going to get paid.
Yeah. Yeah, Brandon Knight, for me, the reason I wasn't high on him this year is because I was concerned about his minutes. Like, I just didn't think with Jason Kidd coming in and all the kind of pieces. And I think, Rocky, we talked about this a few podcasts ago, how there's like 2 at every position. You know, I just think that, like, I was a little worried about that. Whereas last year he was, like, obviously the best player. But this year, man, he's just doing it again. And it's just, it's pretty amazing. His numbers are pretty spectacular. And I'm kind of surprised by how of a small and skinny guy, how good of a rebounder he is. Because, I mean, 6 rebounds for a point guard is really good, especially a guy who's not that big. So it's pretty impressive.
I was worried about him because I just didn't think he was very good. But he's been putting up great numbers. And I don't know, I think the stigma I've always held against him is he came behind, like, he played for Calipari. Calipari's put up monster recruiting classes, and he came behind, like, the guys of Rose and John Wall before him. And then he had all this hype coming out of high school that he was the next thing, you know, after Rose and Wall. And you just watched him play in college, and you're like, this dude is not anywhere near the caliber of Derrick Rose or John Wall.
Right.
But he made big plays, and he just has progressively got better. He's like, kind of what we talked about, the Mike Conley thing is the league's stacked at point guard right now, and so there's the top tier of point guards that are just on another planet, and then you have so many great point guards underneath them that just don't have the athletic ability or whatever to be on that next tier, and he's right there in that group, and I didn't think he'd ever be there.
TK, do you like Brandon Knight?
Yeah, I do. He reminds me, but he's basically gone the opposite direction of what Brandon Jennings, I thought, could. They basically both are chuckers. They both, you know, were guys that I didn't think could ever be starting point guards long term in the league. And he seems to be the difference between Brandon Jennings, where it just seems like he's just constantly working on his game versus, you know, Brandon Jennings still taking the same bad shots. He just happens to be making them last week.
Yeah, Jennings got hot lately. It's been a huge boon to my fantasy team.
Yeah,
you watch him play, and those shots are so bad that he takes, dude. It's like he kicks his leg and he fades away, and it's off the dribble. It's like, oh my god.
And then you hear in the off season, you know, I love it when players always say, "Oh, I've been in the gym. I gained 15 pounds."
Yeah.
And anytime you hear that, you know, it's a guy that wasn't doing that before.
Right.
And you know, that's your job, and you need to be in the gym and improve. So just because you gain weight doesn't mean you're going to take better shots. And he's a player who's going to be streaky. And he can make shots, you know, that you just shake your head because he can make them, but you shake him because he takes it too.
Yeah, totally.
There's like 2 or 3 players in the league like him. Nick Young. I mean,
So I get
Brandon
paid.
Jennings. Oh my gosh, man! Like the Nick he nicknamed himself Swaggy P, and I feel like Brandon Jennings should have that same name.
He needs some swag. He needs a nickname.
Every time he pulls up, like, it's just ridiculous. I'm just in awe that he made the decision to shoot it, but I kind of like envy him. You know, the way he pulls up, fades away, kicks his leg out, and then is like, when he's on, it's buckets. Like, I've never seen, I don't know, he might be one of the players in the league that catches fire, like, more than anybody. Like, or not, like, as frequently, but when he catches fire, it's just, oh my gosh, it's unstoppable. But he, like TK said, the guy's, if he's your starting point guard, good luck.
You know, TK talks about him kind of being a Jamal Crawford type guy. You know, that's where he's best suited is, hey, he's a guy who can get you buckets. But if you're talking about a starting point guard, and your role as a starting point guard is to do a lot more than just get buckets. But, you know, he's probably best suited as that, you know, as that backup point guard on a good team who can just, you know, get you 20 points.
That, or like a city league legend, maybe. Something like
he
that.
is a Drew League legend.
His game is built for that, man.
No doubt.
He's in LA. They have those summer rec leagues, and you see all the NBA players in there, and you always see Brandon Jennings in there scoring 50 a night, taking those same shots.
Well, he's from there. He's from the Southern California area. But I think the main difference between Crawford and Jennings is the mental game. I think Crawford is a consummate professional. And he's accepted that role. I don't know if Jennings, I mean, you heard about the rumblings coming from Jennings when Augustine was getting minutes over him in the first week of the, I don't know if you guys did hear, but I heard he was yelling at Stan Van Gundy. He's like, you know, if you're going to play more minutes than me, then just fucking start him. You know, I think that was the quote. And so, you know, that just kind of shows who Jennings is. And I think Jamal Crawford, I mean, if you hear that guy in interviews, I mean, he's a legitimate professional. He's a professional scorer, you know what I mean? Like, he's accepted that role. And plus, you watch him play, he's like, he hits the most ridiculous shots, like, consistently. Like,
so many
game.
and one threes. It's like, wow.
Fade away,
every time.
off
it's
balance.
Just never shocked when he makes them.
I know, it's insane. Hey, I got a twist here, if you guys mind diving into some fantasy. CH and I made a big trade over the last week, and I traded Channing Frye, who's been playing great basketball lately, and I gave him Alec Burks from Utah Jazz, a young up-and-coming two-guard, for Trevor Ariza. And CH said I could have Trevor Ariza or Chandler Parsons, and I went with Ariza. What do you guys think about that?
I'm an Ariza fan as far as comparative to Chandler Parsons this year. We talked about it in the first podcast, I think.
Between him and
Rockets,
Hayward.
Yeah, the Rockets system is just, Parsons left that system, which is a great system, and went to a good system in the Mavericks, but Ariza definitely gets a bump because he's playing for the Rockets. He gets to shoot a lot of corner threes. They play at a fast pace. He plays with James Harden and Dwight Howard. And so I wouldn't have said that at the beginning of the year, but after seeing the way Parsons has started this year, which hasn't been bad, hasn't been great, I definitely think Ariza was the right choice on that.
That's it, you know, exactly what I was thinking. I just based it off what I've seen so far this year and where I think it was projected. I think Parsons is going to project a little, you know, continue to get a little bit better and shoot a little higher percentage. But, man, you just can't argue with, like, 6 or 7 three-point attempts that Ariza's getting. Or it's insane. He's hitting 2.5 threes right now. And he's also getting 2 steals, which is big time. And that's pretty much why I did that was the steals. It was the steals for me. What do you think, T?
Yeah, I think you got the better player of the two for sure. I would have went Trevor Ariza there too, which I'm like Rocky, where I wouldn't have done that at the start of the season. What were the 2 players you flipped for him?
Channing Frye and Alec Burks.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I would have done that deal if I would have had Trevor Ariza. I just can't see. I don't think I would have done that one. Would you have done that trade, Rocky?
It all depends on your roster, to be honest with you. Burks has had a monster week this week.
He has.
He had like 14 rebounds the other day, if I saw right.
20 and 14, yeah.
Yeah, that's insane for a guard. Channing Frye is one of those guys who's been on my team the last 4 or 5 years at some point, it seems like. When he's healthy And the thing that you have going with Channing Frye this year compared to the other years is he's going to get consistent minutes for the Magic as long as he's healthy.
Exactly.
Whereas he's not in that rotation with the Suns where they're mixing, Markieff and Marcus Morris, and then, it's like a 4-man rotation. So I don't have any problem with the deal at all. I think you took the right guy in Ariza. I do think Chandler Parsons is going to get better, though. He's been disappointing to me, but I do think he's going to get better. But Ariza, the system, it's kind of like the Golden State Warriors of the past or the Phoenix Suns when Nash was there. The system just, inflates some of the numbers for some of these guys.
Mm-hmm. And my thought process on it was, I've kind of been 5'4" and 6'3" either way on those, and my team kind of needed to go a different direction. I have like 3 big guys, and my team is a 3-point shooting team, and Frye fits that. Mm-hmm. And I needed another guard with George Hill being hurt, and Burks gives you that point guard, shooting guard. Definitely give it the best player. So like TK's saying, you always want to be on the other side of that, getting the best player. So I guess if you were to cheek the trade, you always want to favor that side. But for me, it was time to make a change, and that was the deal we came up with.
Well, I think too, to speak to that was that, you had 3 waiver guys that you could just drop, So I think when you have 3 or 4 guys that are just droppable players, you can make those 2-for-1s. And then also too, you already have Dirk and Ryan Anderson, and adding Channing Frye to that, you have 3 of the best at a position 3-point shooters in the NBA. And so even if you have a couple point guards who don't hit threes, let's say you make another trade down the line, you're still going to be covered in threes because you're getting them from your power forwards and centers, So I thought it made sense.
The other reason that trade is doable for me is Ariza or Parsons, neither one, especially Parsons at this point, isn't a player that's to me, I'd never give a 2-for-1 up for just a stud.
Right.
And I wouldn't consider Ariza or Parsons absolute studs. Parsons in the last couple years maybe, but at this point, it's not like you're giving away a top 20 player for him.
Right.
And the guy I was looking for on Rory's team was Horford. He just hasn't quite reached his potential yet. Right. And he does look healthy, and they've kind of kept an eye on his minutes, and they haven't quite gelled yet. And that's kind of the guy I was eyeing at. But the trade just got too big, and even though Dirk's, numbers aren't great right now, but you look like we've talked about, this blowout games, and he's just a guy I've had a lot of success with in the past, so I kind of like keeping him.
Yeah. Well, and Horford this year, speaking to him, is he's averaging 29 minutes right now, which, for an all-star caliber power forward is very, very low. And his efficiency is incredibly high. So, if you even add 5 minutes to that, and instead of, averaging 14 and 7, he's averaging 18 and 9, So I think it's just a matter of time before he's getting more minutes. So we'll see, though.
TK, what's your opinion on Horford and Dirk and kind of just the whole situation?
Yeah, I'm a little surprised they haven't given more time to Horford. I've watched some Hawks games here and there, and they definitely take him out maybe 6 minutes into the quarters.
So. I know. I just don't understand. He looks healthy out there.
Looks great.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised they haven't given him more of a leash. But yeah, I would have kept in that trade. I probably would have kept Dirk. But it's a very close one. You could really go either way. They're both to me a very similar value. Mm-hmm. I think Horford's got a little bit more upside if he does start getting, more minutes.
Definitely.
I think that's really what the key to that trade is at what point does he start getting more minutes. And I think once he does, he just can. Now Dirk is starting to hit a few more threes, so that definitely helps his cause, but it just seems like Horford can give you a little bit more from a goodies perspective. So generally I would rather have Horford, but I think right now I'd rather have Dirk.
Yeah. Dirk's values in percentages, really, at this point in his career. Horford, I don't know what happened, but he forgot how to make free throws. Last year,
89 this year.
Is he this year? Okay.
Yeah, but he's only going one attempt a game, so it doesn't even matter.
Is he?
Yeah.
Last year he went to he was shooting
60.
below 60%. Yeah, and it was unbelievable because all throughout the start of his career he was like a 50-80 guy, 50% field goal, 80% free throw. So there's a lot of value in him. He's still a great player, and I think they're going to bump his minutes up as he goes. So
and I think Budenholzer. Sorry to cut you off, but I think Budenholzer. He's a a Popovich student, and I think he's really taking a page out of his book. Like, hey, man, he's the opposite of Thibodeau. He's like, you know what, I don't care.
Right.
If you're healthy, then I know I can give you 25, 30 minutes a night, and you'll be there, rather than just play you 35, 40 and run you into the ground, and then you pop your shoulder out again, So I think that's what it was, or it is.
One thing that I kind of thought about, too, while you're talking about that, and him coming out 6 minutes, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but it seems like star players more frequently now, coaches' rotations are different. Like Bosch comes into the game, plays the first 4 or 5 minutes, and comes out, and then comes back into the game end of the first quarter.
Right.
Like, so they do that with Rondo as well. They're still getting the same amount of minutes, but they're distributing the minutes at different points in the game. And I don't know, maybe it's just I haven't noticed that in the past, but to me it's weird having Bosch and Rondo check out of the game with 6-7 minutes still left in the first quarter. And I don't know if anybody else has noticed that.
It's something I saw Dallas do with Dirk
Carlisle.
a lot last year.
Yeah,
they're doing it again this year, yeah.
And it's something, for Dirk, it makes sense. He's a guy, he's at the end of his career, and you can put him back in and he can still make those crazy shots. But, for Rondo, you'd like to see him just in there,
Well, the only thought I could think of is with Rondo and with Bosch is that they want him running with the second unit,
Exactly.
with the alpha dog on the second unit.
Exactly.
Because they don't have a bench scorer, but it's not a bad thing. I'd never really noticed that. Like you said, with an aging player like Dirk or Tim Duncan, I've always seen coaches be delicate with those minutes. But with like guys, in their upper 20s still, that's the first for me that I've really noticed this.
Well, I think, the great coaches start trends, and that's kind of like what Carlisle did last year with Dirk, and it worked because then he would come back in with that second unit playing against bench mobs and just crush them, and then like with Rondo, I think the whole strategy there for Brad Stevens is I'll pull Rondo out, I don't really care about winning a ton of games, even though he probably does. Brad Stevens is a competitor. But then you pull him out, and then he comes back in and then leads that second unit as a point guard. So I think it's really about, like, the needs you have in your second unit. Like, with the Mavericks, they need scoring, so they pull him out early and play Dirk. And then, like, with the Celtics, they don't really have a good distributor besides Rondo, so they take him out and then bring him back in, like let the Jeff Green show start for a couple minutes, and then bring Rondo back in toward that end of that first quarter.
And let's kind of get on to another player who's kind of not quite on the same caliber as the guys we've talked about, but a guy who's kind of starting to reach his potential. Obviously, it's been short-lived so far, is the center in Phoenix. He's backup center right now, is Alex Len. He's a guy I took a flyer on in both my long-term leagues for, I got spots to fill in there, and if it doesn't work out, you can cut ties because he has been injury-prone. But you watch him play, and man, he runs the floor really well. He can block shots and rebound. And in Phoenix, they have the Plum Dog Millionaire, and they play Markieff Morris at center, and that's really it. So there's a lot of minutes there at center. TK, what do you think about Alex Len?
I have happened to recently watch some Phoenix Suns games. I think he's going to win that starting job in the long run. He kind of reminds me of, like, in terms of keeping him, like someone like Ed Davis, where I think in time they're both going to be a couple guys that are going to get 30 to 35 minutes. He is a much better offensive player than Miles Plumlee is. He's capable of hitting a mid-range game. He's got a post-up game. So he's just a better player. So I think in the long run, I don't know if maybe his injury from last year is why they're starting him off a little slow from his minutes, in terms of his minutes. But I think in the long run, he's going to be a guy that's going to win that job. So he definitely is an intriguing flyer I would keep an eye on.
Mm-hmm. From what I've seen of Alex Len, he's very skilled. He probably needs to increase his toughness a little bit, and I think that's why Plum Dog does start, because he's more of your prototypical banger, But Alex Len, he's also dealt with a lot of injuries too. But I think for him to come out, which is basically his rookie year because he didn't play at all last year, and come out and play pretty well in limited minutes, it's been pretty impressive. He looks very skilled, and I think he looks like he matches pretty well with the kind of that small ball lineup that they run. But I haven't seen him a lot. I kind of watched him blow up the last 2 games with near double-doubles, but I haven't seen a lot of him, so I can't say too much.
What about you, Rocky?
I haven't watched him enough play. That's one of the teams that I haven't watched a lot of is the Phoenix Suns. A lot of the games that kind of I end up tuning into, like right now, because of daily fantasy. This is the low point of my life. I'm watching Boston Celtics and Philadelphia 76ers.
I know.
Because I've got Rondo and Carter Williams going tonight. And so it's one of those things where their rotations have been crazy with the 3-point guards and who's getting minutes. And so from a fantasy perspective, they're hardly ever on my daily teams unless it's a tournament. And so I don't catch as many of their games as I should probably.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, they're just kind of a fun team to watch. I like watching Bledsoe and Dragic. Isaiah is just a professional bucket getter too. And they were playing the Celtics last night, and it was just a great game. For some reason, I had no action whatsoever on that game, and I found myself watching it.
Gerald Green is a fun player to watch.
He's so passionate,
He might be the best jumper that I've seen
ever.
For reals. Yeah, it's unbelievable the way he jumps.
CH, were you there with me at that Stampede game when he played in the D League?
No, I remember you telling me about that though.
It was probably the best dunk I've ever seen live. Like when I'm at that Idaho Stampede game, and we're watching. I think he was on the Phoenix D League team, and they came through.
He was on the Laker.
It was a Laker Defenders, is what it was, huh? Yeah, or the LA Defenders, and he came and did. His typical. You see it a lot now because he plays in the league, but that typical where he just pulls back and gets his head above the rim and just tomahawks it, kind of like that LeBron dunk. But it was just unreal because it's right before the half, and his neck was above the rim, and it was like, oh my god! And I jumped out of my seat, and that doesn't happen very often at the Idaho Stampede. So, so it was
Antoine
crazy.
Walker didn't get you to do that.
No, Antoine, he was eating too much breakfast at Goldie's, man. So,
did he ever give you the shimmy shake?
Oh god,
Antoine was in there
bad.
eating waffles every day.
Dude, he couldn't even put up 20 in City League, man, let alone the Stampede, dude. He was so fat. But no, Gerald Green, I was watching him the other day. I was watching the Suns, and it's so funny because you can tell like Hornacek and him kind of clash, but like Hornacek just knows he's just a baller kind of scorer, like he can't keep him off the floor. And it was kind of funny. He was making these like really dumb mistakes, but it was just out of pure aggression, And so I think it's kind of funny, like, as a coach, how you really kind of have to. I think the good coaches do that, like when they pull themselves back and they accept the bad with the good, like a Jamal Crawford or a Westbrook when they take crazy shots or they do something weird. But the coaches know, like, it's at the end of the day, it's going to outweigh the bad. And I think that's kind of the same case with Gerald Green and Coach Hornacek.
Yeah, I think you hit it right. I mean, you look at Popovich. What he's did with Manu,
yeah,
Ginobili.
Totally.
I mean, he probably bit through his tongue 15 times a game at some point watching him do things that were just insane. And Gerald Green's kind of like that. I've always kind of wondered how he was out of the league for so long. I know he makes dumb mistakes, but to me, there wasn't a spot on the end of the bench for that guy somewhere because he beat the Golden State Warriors the other day almost single-handedly because they brought him in third quarter and he just went on a run himself. I think he had like 9 straight points, had a dunk like you were talking about off an alley-oop that was just a routine alley-oop, but his head and his elbow was above the rim when he finished it. And so to me, I don't know, maybe bad attitude, maybe unprofessional, something, but usually talent trumps that. And I've just been surprised that it took him so long to find a place in the league like he has with Phoenix.
I read a good piece on Gerald Green a couple years back, and I know he was like in Russia for a while, and it just really spoke to him, like kind of like you said, just getting his head game right, like realizing the opportunities he blew, and because I think he was on the Mavericks and the Celtics early on in his career with good coaches and just didn't latch on. But I think it was really about the mental game, and that's what I think a lot of people don't realize with the NBA is. You gotta not only be an incredible athlete, but you gotta have a serious mental game to not give into the temptations, and to like when you make it to continue to work and get better. And so I think that's what I think Gerald Green was just a late bloomer.
Yeah.
When kind of our last guy for this segment is Draymond Green over in Golden State.
Baller.
David Lee, he's been injured, so he's got all the run in the world. He's a free agent next year. He's averaging 13.7 rebounds, 2 threes, and a block. You watch Golden State as a team that I always try and watch play at night. They're just so fun to watch. Steph Curry, Clay, and Draymond's just a great all-around player. He's a guy you can plug into damn near any lineup, and he's gonna give you numbers. Do you see Draymond keeping these numbers when David Lee comes back?
TK, go ahead, man.
Well, I don't know if I know exactly where his numbers are right now. I think he's still going to start. I'm trying to think, on top of my head, how many minutes he's probably getting. He's probably right around the 30 number.
Yeah, I would say, low 30s.
I'm gonna pull it up real quick.
Yeah, I know. Like I said, I know he's going to start. I would say he's probably going to get his minutes at least
He's
clipped
32 minutes.
So he's at 32. I would say he probably drops down to about 26, 27, somewhere in that range. I know that he fits in perfect with that starting lineup. Just, if anyone just sits there and watches them, he just in there splashing threes with the rest of them. So I would say he's one of those guys that I would have a little concern that could hold its fantasy value just because of the slight minute dip. And he's not a guy that's going to go out there and score a lot. Basically, he's not going to be a guy that's going to demand the ball. And those kind of players, when you put them on teams with more depth, their fantasy value definitely will drop some just because they're just good reality players.
Yeah, I mean, Draymond Green is so unique. He's such a special kind of player, the way he plays. And I think this kind of goes back to, again, the eye test. You compare him to Harrison Barnes in college. Everyone talked up Harrison Barnes because he had all the hops and the beautiful jump shot that goes in sometimes, and all that. But Draymond Green was just a competitor, and he was a serious, aggressive player. And it just shows no, it's the complete opposite of what Iguodala has done since he's went to Golden State. His aggression has dropped off the map, and he's the kind of guy that needs the ball in his hands. Whereas Draymond Green fits in perfect with Steph Curry and Klay because he doesn't need the ball, and he goes and gets the ball off the glass, and then he's averaging 3 assists too. He's just a really good all-around player. He's improved every year, and he seems like he loves the game, and he just wants to get better all the time. I mean, he's averaging 2 threes, a block, a steal, and good percentages. There's just not a lot of players who do that,
And like TK was saying, he's a reality player. He just can splash threes. He moves the basketball, and when David Lee comes back, do you think they're going to start David Lee?
No, I don't think they should. I think they'd be dumb if they did. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I wouldn't start him either. I would definitely roll Draymond Green. Mm-hmm. The problem with a guy like David Lee, I don't think he fits also coming off the bench. He's one of those kind of guys that if you're going to have him, he's going to suit better in a starting role. He's not going to be a guy that can just come in. I mean, he can score, but he kind of scores within the flow of the offense. He's not a guy that you're just going to say, go get us a bucket, Mm-hmm. So because of that, I don't know if he really suits well in the bench role, but he also doesn't have a favorable contract, so I don't see a lot of situations where maybe they can move him. I don't think he's got a lot of years left. He might have 1 or 2 years tops, so they have that going for him. But that if they choose not to start him, which I think they should look to move him if possible.
And Golden State's, is running really well of a machine right now.
Yeah, they're third in the
Steve
West.
Kerr's got them playing some ball. They got a good GM. They got a lot of assets over there. I'm curious to see, what they do with that roster.
Well, I'm looking at the standings right now, and you got Memphis at 10-1, which is amazing. And you got 2 Houston, 9-2, 3 Golden State, 8-2. So, how do you change? Even though it's a really good player, a proven all-star comes back. I mean, how do you change things when you're 8-2? And you're and even though the 2 losses that you've had have been pretty close games, I don't know. What do you think, Rock?
I would start Draymond Green, but I don't have any problem with David Lee starting either, just because he doesn't stretch the court like Draymond Green, but he's not a ball stopper, so he's going to fit their scheme pretty well. He moves the ball. He's actually a very, very good passer for a big man.
He is, yeah.
His biggest liability is probably on the defensive end, and so, but they do have Andrew Bogut to protect the rim a little bit, and so, to me, I don't think it's a bad thing at all. I think no matter what the decision, Steve Kerr will get them to find their chemistry, and it just adds another piece to the puzzle for depth for them that they're going to be able to go to the playoffs with. And so to me, it might throw them off for a week or so, but I think the big picture, it's a plus to have a guy like David Lee coming back from injury, even if it cuts into a guy like Draymond Green's minutes for 6 minutes a game or whatever it is. I think it just adds more depth to the team. So
yeah, and you're right. Actually, I mean, I think Draymond might be that kind of player too, who would accept coming off the bench and not bitch about it and still just do his thing, you know. So that's the plus side to that. Whereas David Lee on the other side might be a little like, come on guys, I'm an all-star power forward, like why aren't you starting me, you know, kind of thing. So even though he's a professional too.
Yeah, I watched probably the Warriors the most just because Steph Curry is my favorite player, and their chemistry seems right.
Exactly.
Like almost no matter what happens. I think Iguodala made a comment that he's not really loving the bench role. I think Steve Kerr's probably, we talked with Jeff Hornacek, what a good job he's did down there. I think he's going to be able to handle that situation really well. I just don't see any locker room cancer, so I kind of feel like they know the alpha dog is Steph, and they know that Clay is right there with him, and everybody else kind of has roles, and I think Draymond Green's definitely a guy who's going to find the role that he needs to help the team win, because that's what he did at Michigan State as well. And so, again, another player we talked about, Reggie Jackson, and these guys, Draymond Green was another guy in college that you're just like, this guy's an NBA player, and he's just found a great role within this Warriors team, and he seems like a really fun, energetic guy that also kind of just fits the makeup of the team. So I'm not worried about that situation. I kind of view it as a positive that they've been 8-2 without David Lee, and they're getting another guy who's been an all-star. I wouldn't consider him an all-star now, but he's coming back, and they're just adding more firepower to that team.
And, you know, TK, you kind of called this one a little early with, you know, Stephen Curry MVP. I know all of us just absolutely love Anthony Davis right now for obvious reasons. But with Golden State, if they're able to take that 1 seed in the West, you really have to talk about Stephen Curry for MVP. And, you know, and as Anthony Davis is probably our early MVP, is there anyone that would disagree with that?
No. He's doing things that the game hasn't seen before.
Yeah, he's amazing. Some of the rebounds he gets and putbacks, I mean, just like, it's just
so effortlessly.
Yeah.
Did you see the block against Portland 2 nights ago where he blocked the guy, flipped around, and blocked him with the other hand?
God.
There's a vine of it on Twitter somewhere. Goes out to contest a jump shot, blocks it. The block goes right back to the same guy who shot it. Guy gets it, shoots it, and Anthony Davis turns around and blocks it with the other hand. So he got 2 blocks in like 2 seconds. And, I mean, he was not within 5-6 feet of the guy when he blocked him, but his arms just go forever.
Yeah. I think you could throw Cousins in that conversation a little bit, because the Kings have shown that they're at least a respectable team now. You know, the Clippers have come on the gate slow, so I think Blake's not in that conversation right now. Steph, obviously, because they're in the top 3 in the West. But then he's right there, man. He's right there, you know.
I think Steph and Davis are the 2 guys. Cousins, to me, you can't be on a team that loses 20, 30-point leads twice in 1 week.
Yeah, that was
I
bad.
think it's 3 times, too. I think they blew another one. I don't know. It probably wasn't quite 20, though.
Yeah, but I mean, it no matter, it can't happen, and he's a fantastic player, and I've just been so impressed by his game this year, but there's no way he's going to get any MVP love with that happening.
No, but I do think that he will absolutely for sure be a all-star. And I don't think
for sure.
Like last year, he was kind of like a tween or, you know, a fringe guy where a lot of coaches still didn't like him, but at this rate, you cannot keep that guy off the all-star team.
And for coaches on the hot seat, there's always a lot of guys starting off slow right now. And, you know, our number 1 guy we constantly talk about is Mr. Brian Shaw down in Denver, who actually I thought would be a good coach.
Yeah, me too.
Obviously, I'm a Laker homer, so I just assume everyone coming out of there is going to do great. And was completely wrong about that one. And will Brian Shaw make it to Christmas, TK?
I think they may let him make it to Christmas, but I don't think he should make it to Christmas.
They'll let him make it.
Those kind of spots, you know. I think Christmas might seem a little early just for a team to just get rid of someone unless you're like the Lakers, but I think he definitely should be gone. He should be gone tomorrow. You know, I don't think it's even a question at this point.
I completely
They
agree
just
with
beat
that.
the Cavs, man. At Cleveland
For their second win.
On a back-to-back.
And that's why you can't bet on the NBA, ladies and gentlemen. You know, like on a back-to-back for their second win.
What do you think about that, Rory?
B. Shaw, man, I think I think this is an example of assistant coaches aren't always good head coaches because all you ever heard when he was an assistant coach is how he's the best assistant coach and he deserves an NBA head coaching job and players love him. And I think that can kind of bite you in the butt too as a head coach when you have to be the disciplinarian rather than like the good cop, to the bad cop head coach, as an assistant coach. Because that's what I've kind of seen is everyone loves B. Shaw. All you hear about B. Shaw is great things. He's a cool guy. He's a good guy. He knows basketball. Kobe's like one of his biggest fans. But like, you're coaching an NBA team and you've got to figure out your offense, and you're not just going to be the friend to the player who didn't get enough minutes that night. Like you've got to like coach him up, and so I think that's been his biggest obstacle when I watch the Nuggets is like they don't really have an identity. It's kind of like watching the Orlando Magic. It's like, what the hell are they? Like they're got some talent, and I think the Orlando Magic are actually figuring it out a little bit, but the Nuggets, it's like how much talent they have. They're just not putting it together, and he's got Lawson on an island out there, and then he's trying to squeeze in Danilo, even though he's like a shell of himself, and he's got a tough job there with all those like, kind of players like the Bucks have, where it's like two of the same players.
Yeah, it's just redundant over and over, same thing everywhere.
Mm-hmm. But I just think B. Shaw needs to tighten it up a little bit. It seems like when I watch, like even when they're getting their ass kicked the other night, like what were they down with like 50 or whatever, like he just didn't look that pissed. I was like, I would be on the sideline like losing my mind, like firing players like right there, like you're off the team, like it's just I don't know. He just seems like maybe too nice of a guy. So I don't know. We'll just have to see.
He coaches just like he played with the Lakers when he won those championships. Mm-hmm. Pass and go to the corner and hang out.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty much is that what he said in the interview? Look, I'm just going to go to the corner,
pretty much,
let my players play.
Yeah, wasn't it like Mike Penberthy or something like that? It's got a ring somewhere. I mean,
does Penberthy have a ring?
He got on for one of those
yeah,
Shaq Kobe ones.
Yeah,
I mean, Morrison's got one.
I just view it like he's not good at coaching. Like Leroy said, there's just like he seems like a good guy, but I don't think any of his players have any respect for him just by viewing like the body language and everything. I think he's a sitting duck at this point. Mm-hmm. And I'll always say this, if you cannot figure your rotation out in the NBA, you're not going to be good. Mm-hmm. That's like coaching 101. Players at any level of anything need to know a role within the team that they are good at. And if you throw guys out there and say, well, today you've got the hot hand, so you're going to play 36 minutes, and tomorrow you're only going to play 12, it's just not going to work out. Mm-hmm. And to me, like, the big case in point with that is, like, Kenneth Faried. If you look at his, like, minutes in the last 2 years that he's played under Shaw, the other night he got, like, 20 minutes.
Right.
And it's not like he's not working hard, because that's what his game's built off of.
Right.
And I don't get how a guy can go into like the Team USA setting with Cousins, with Anthony Davis, with all these guys and excel in that setting, but not be good enough for the Denver Nuggets that are like 2-10 or whatever they are right now. Mm-hmm. I just view it like, I don't know, like I said, the redundant pieces, two of everything doesn't work, and a coach that wants to play everybody like, 26 minutes, it just doesn't, it doesn't fly for me. Wilson Chandler should be playing 36 minutes a
totally
game.
Agree.
Danilo should be playing 8. If they need to get him in the game, get him 8 minutes for a break. But to split the time up between those guys is ridiculous.
Wilson's
it's just
far superior right now.
And it's not just this year with Brian Shaw. He was doing the same thing last year as well, and it's not working. Like even the Mozgov JaVale McGee thing, like, and JJ Hickson, they're trying to rotate 3 centers, and it's, you know what I mean? Like, they just find a guy, go with them, and make adjustments from there. But don't try to fill each game out like separately. Like, well, maybe today I'll do this. And he's the Larry Drew of this season for me. Larry Drew last year was awful.
When it just goes back to the nice guy thing, I think it's just like he's just trying to play all his guys, and get them all in there. And you got to be, that's kind of the toughest part of being a coach. You got to be a dick, like you got to be, like you said, you got to have your 8 or 9 guys you're going to play, if it's even that many, and roll with it, man. Like it's embarrassing.
It's hard to get in a rhythm as a player. You're playing 20
what's your role every night?
By the time you're starting to feel good about yourself, you're out of the game,
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like Rory hit on it like with Gerald Green and his mental game and all these things, but everybody has a role, and they need to like figure what they're good at out, so they can like step in and produce as a player. And that's where you see like a lot of these guys that have made careers in the league, like Brandon Bass for the Celtics. Like, he's not a good player, but he figured out his niche in the league to find a mid-range jumper, to rebound the ball, and do those kind of things. He knows that, but he's had coaches that have put him in that situation with Doc Rivers or Brad Stevens and these kind of guys. With Brian Shaw, like, if you are Wilson Chandler, like, you're thinking, what am I supposed to do? Do I come in and shoot the ball, or am I here to defend, or what is my responsibility in the team? And I just feel like the way he rotates his players, that I'm just saying, like, from a standpoint of like, every player should know, like, you look at the Spurs, they're a well-oiled machine. When they sit Duncan, Tony Parker, and Ginobili and these guys, the next guy in knows what he's supposed to do. He knows his role. And Brian Shaw is like the totally opposite of Popovich.
Which is, that means he sucks.
Yeah, you're right.
He sucks. Yeah. You know who else I think is on the hot seat, and it's crazy to say it because he's just got hired, but I mean, I don't want to say hot seat, but I just think he's a bad coach and he needs to go, is the Lakers coach, man. Like, what is he doing right now? Like,
I don't care who's coaching that team. You're not getting wins.
yeah.
And we just have this history. I keep saying we. I need to stop that.
I say that constantly.
The Lakers have a history, Mike. I mean, we hired him. Let's let him ride it out. I mean, at least give him a shot. I agree. I don't think he's a good coach either. But I don't care if you put a good coach over there. I don't know how much better you're really going to get over there.
Yeah, that's a
Give
good
Ed
point.
Davis some love. I'd be happy with that. Let the guy play more than 18 minutes a game.
Yeah.
That would be a
Yeah,
start
that's a
for
good
me.
point.
Liquor
I mean,
Nation has been calling for Ed Davis to start actually over Boozer. I've been in that Liquor Nation site, and people are all over it. And that's what's cool about Laker fans actually, is that they actually they're pretty educated fans. You know?
Right.
And they watch these games and they see Ed Davis come in and actually play real NBA defense and then clean the glass harder than him, and he's like blocking shots. Like, Boozer, you suck. And let's get Ed Davis in there, please.
And I'm sitting on him in a fantasy league, and I really need him to get some minutes. Because the 6 and 7s, I mean, it's not working out, man. Give him the 30 clip. Let Boozer be Boozer on the bench, and everyone's going to be happy.
I'm with CH, though. It just, no matter what you do, they're just going to be bad. They've assembled just an awful stockpile of talent.
Yeah, they have.
And the one thing, though, that is unfortunate is, Julius Randle going down. That hurts.
Bad.
I mean, that hurts. That's
We
their
can
prized
develop
possession.
young talent.
Yeah.
We can't develop young talent out there right now.
That gets me, though, too, to thinking, how disappointing has the rookie class been?
Terribly. Elfrid Payton just lost his spot, and now I think he played 6 minutes last night. So
Wiggins has been bad. Jabari's been not
very
bad,
mediocre.
but not good.
Yeah.
To me, like, this was, like, teams were tanking on purpose to be part of this rookie class. And after watching things play out, I felt that way about Wiggins in college. I felt like he was overrated. There's a lot of good qualities that he had, but he had a lot of long ways to go. I'm really disappointed in Jabari because he just, Melo came into the league, which everybody compared him to Melo, and right off the bat, you could just see Melo offensively was on another level, and Jabari is really struggling to find his way. But other than that, I mean, can you think of any rookies that are making a significant impact on the league right now?
Well, and Jabari just doesn't look aggressive. Like, if you watch him play, he doesn't look like the Jabari at Duke when he was just like, this is my team. He looks like he's deferring, and he's just passing shots that he should take. Like, I saw this one on the break. He had a 2-on-1, and he had like I can't remember exactly who it was. It was like a small guard right in front of him. And instead of just going to the basket and tomahawking or just getting a strong bucket, he like spin moves, passes, and gets the ball stolen. It's like, he'll figure it out. I mean, we're talking about a guy who's 20 years old and his 10th game in the NBA. But like, I kind of agree with you. Like, it's been just a kind of a shit fest from all these rookies.
I'm just coming from the standpoint of people treated this rookie class like there was transcendent players like Duncans, LeBrons, like people that were going to change the game, or that we viewed for the rest of our lives as Hall of Fame type players. And we've had a lot of those players come through in the last 15 years, and the first time they stepped on the court, you saw that in them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there was guys like Dirk that started slow and adjusted the game, but the first time LeBron checked in the game, because he came off the bench, it was a wrap. Everybody knew what LeBron was going to be. And Carmelo, same thing. He was a fantastic player his rookie year.
What was it, the 03 class?
Yeah, Dwayne Wade,
Bosh.
All these guys, Bosh, they step in and they belong.
Darko.
Right from the beginning.
I was going to say Darko.
Yeah, but Wiggins and these guys,
That's
just...
Hello.
Yeah. They just don't... I don't know. They just don't look the part for me.
TK, you still there?
Yeah,
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, no, I was just chiming in on Melo on the draft class you guys just brought up,
Yeah.
that 03 class.
It is kind of funny, though, like how I think, once again, the Spurs just nail it perfectly. Like, let's just keep winning, and then, like, let's just pluck undervalued people in the late first, early second round, and let's just keep making them into players, and let's just keep doing this thing.
And you're going to see Anderson in a couple years be a player.
Totally agree. The one game he came in and played minutes, he looked like a really good player. So I didn't see it, but I saw his stat line, and it was like, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, 10 points, like just a well-rounded, like kind of, poor man's Boris Diaw,
One thing real quick, too, to kind of keep an eye on, it's back on the coaching, firing list or whatever you want to call it. I think keep an eye on Scott Brooks. I think this might be the time where maybe they might be able to slowly fire him.
Slowly fire.
In terms of kind of, you know what I mean by under the radar to an extent.
Make it a long, drawn-out process.
I mean,
Look, we like you, but you're fired.
I think the standard fan in Oklahoma City is aware of, where he's taken them. And I think the standard, basketball fan that knows what's going on is aware of, how limited he is offensively in terms of, his philosophy as a coach. And so I think now might be the time to kind of cut ties with him, because you could easily argue that he's been the reasons that, that they haven't won any championships, because they've had talent. They obviously have the 2 alpha dogs they have now. The teams, when they had James Harden, they really have no excuse at this point to why they haven't won a title. And I know, and obviously LeBron James is a big reason to that, but I think now might be the time to kind of, cut ties and head in a different direction. So I think that's a guy to kind of keep an eye on.
And he
I
kind
think
of
that'd
seems
be
to
a great
develop.
decision.
I agree, completely agree, and he seems to develop players. Like you see, we talk about Reggie Jackson. Russell's gotten better every year, but you watch the games and they don't run anything great. I mean, and then you get to playoff ball and they're just running the same old bullshit, and it's not good enough. As good as all those guys are, you can't just shoot 30-footers with Durant and let Russell do whatever he wants and then expect it's going to win in the tough West. And then you still got LeBron over in the East. So I agree. I think I would like to see that, actually.
Well, I think that's why Scotty Brooks has gotten away with not really running an offense, is because when they are healthy, they've proven that they can beat anybody. Like, when they beat the Spurs and they lost the first 2 and then they swept them right after that. It was like, between Westbrook and Durant, it doesn't really matter what you run, because you literally can beat anybody with those 2 players. And I think but on the flip side of that, if you had Popovich running that team, can you imagine how good they'd be?
Yeah, and it's just like getting the most out of the players,
Mm-hmm.
and that's one. And I think he's got a skill for developing talent. It's just, is he getting the most out of that lineup? And I mean, he's clearly not. And I mean, obviously this year's a little different because of injuries, but I mean, he's going to have to. I would like to see him do that, and see great players get great coaching, and that's when they become, get to that next level and become champions. If you get drafted by the Spurs, you're lucky to be a part of that, or just be involved with great coaching in general is rare in the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. One guy I'm going to throw out who's not even close to being on the hot seat and is a great coach, but just watching their games, Doc Rivers.
Mm-hmm.
When I watch
What
the
are they
Clippers
doing?
play, I don't get why they play so slow.
Mm-hmm.
Does anybody else see? I mean, they're the pace they play out is just lethargic, and it's pick and roll, pick and roll, pick and roll, but they have DeAndre Jordan and Blake Griffin as their big men.
Who are the 2 of the fastest, quickest guys in the league.
Exactly, and they got CP3 running the break, and they have shooters, they have JJ Redick in the lineup, they have guys that can spot up, trail the play and spot up. I don't get what's going on with them right now. I just watch them offensively, and offensively they're painful to watch.
Yeah.
And I never
too
thought
much
I would say
output.
that. Yeah, with the talent they have and the high-end talent with CP3 and Blake, two of the best players in the game, how they can be so out of sync and painful to watch, to me, is just beyond me.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that goes a little bit towards Chris Paul. I mean, if you trace his history in the league, he's always been like
Right.
kind of a half-court point guard. He's never been like a blaze you on the break,
Oh, yeah.
And I think that really kind of like lends to his skill set. And I think he runs the show there. I mean, he's just as much of a coach on the floor as Doc Rivers,
He does.
But I totally
One
agree
thing
with you. I mean, anytime you see those guys run, it's like Blake Griffin is so athletic. DeAndre Jordan's the most athletic 7-footer in the history of the world. So like, it's kind of a shame that they don't run the ball more. I agree with you.
I see what you're saying, because CP3, he pounds the ball. He's like Steve. He's like these guys, these point guards that love the ball. But last year they played faster. They got on the break last year, and they were like exciting to watch. It was Lob City. I mean, that's what I mean. They built that name because of how exciting it was to watch the Clippers. And this year, it's not Lob City at all. I mean, it's like it's really, really brutal to watch, and I just don't get it with the talent
I'd like to
they
see
have
some
and
changes
athletic
go on
pieces.
over there. See some them make a move roster wise. I mean,
They
I don't
need
know
to.
what that move is, but maybe CP3 for Russell, something crazy like that. Obviously that probably will never happen, but they
Honestly,
definitely need to make some changes over there.
I like the pieces they have as far as the core guys. I think you can build around CP3, Blake, and DeAndre. JJ Redick, I think, fits great. I think Jamal Crawford's a great six-man. A small forward.
Huge issue.
Barnes, yeah, it's a huge issue. They don't have anybody to defend at the 3 spot, and they need somebody that's a knockdown shooter there that can hit a corner 3. You look at, we talked about Parsons, Ariza, and they're not going to get someone like that to fit their scheme, but they just need somebody who can play D and hit a corner 3. If they could do that, it'd space the floor so much better for Blake and DeAndre, and then if they chose to play in the half court, it'd be a little bit better than what it is right now.
Chandler. That's your
Hey,
man.
man, I'd be fine with it.
And
Bring
be
Wilson
affordable, too.
Chandler to LA. I mean, they got to do something over there.
Yeah, no, I would be fine with that move. I think that makes sense, but I know Doc Rivers isn't on the hot seat. To me, though, I think it's probably going to be blasphemy for a lot of people, but I think he's a little bit overrated as a coach. He had KG, Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, and Rajon Rondo on the same team that had success. That's a lot of talent.
Coaches could win, yeah.
Yeah, and so it's like he kind of built his name off of that, and what he's done with the Clippers, I would have to say, has been disappointing.
Calling out
Yeah, as I
Doc,
say, I mean,
I like it.
It's not a fireable offense or anything like that.
Last year,
He's
though-
not a Brian Shaw, but
Last year, I think he dealt with adversity pretty damn well, though, considering the coach was shouting out racist remarks to his.
Oh,
his
yeah,
fiancée
that's-
over there.
He's not
That's
going
true, yeah.
anywhere.
That
Doc
was
is-
in the middle of the playoffs against the Golden State Warriors. Like, that was not an easy route,
yeah.
And they
I
had that
didn't think
game
about that.
6, that game 6 call that could have went either way, and the Warriors got it. And there was a couple of things that could have just ball bounces a different direction, and they're going. But I totally agree with you. Like their roster is good enough to be dominant. You know what I mean? And they're not dominating.
That's an NBA championship roster,
Yeah.
in my opinion. I just think they need to find a way to be more cohesive in the half court. And to me, some of that, a way to do that is not always be in the half court.
Right.
I mean, they just... And
Open
the
it
other thing,
up.
too, is that looking through stats for fantasy, it kind of shocked me. Them and the Bulls are terrible rebounding teams.
I know.
Like,
It's
dead
weird.
last in the league rebound. How do you have Joakim Noah, Pau Gasol, Taj Gibson, and then on the flip side, Blake Griffin and DeAndre Jordan, and not be able to rebound the ball?
That makes no sense.
Well, and Griffin's only averaging 7 rebounds this year, which I was really
Yeah,
surprised
and that
by.
started last year, or the year before that, I believe. He took a big dip in his rebounding numbers. Probably came with the emergence of DeAndre Jordan, I'm guessing, because the dude just inhales rebounds. But to me, the combination of those two, they shouldn't be like dead last or second to last in the NBA in rebounding. That's a big issue for him.
Another guy, I don't know if he's on the hot seat, because they are playing well, is Monty Williams. Some of the stuff they run over there, I mean, it's just like, what the fuck are they doing? I mean, it's like, God, like, some of the lineups he puts, I just don't know what he's doing sometimes. Like, you have the best player in the world right now over there. Like, he's just backpacking him right now.
I read a stat the other day that Anthony Davis's usage rate in the post, like how many post touches he gets, is like for players qualified, like a certain amount of touches or minutes. He was like almost dead last at getting the ball in the post.
Run the offense through him. How hard is that to see?
It's not right now. If you eliminate LeBron, he might be the best player in the NBA, and for him to be dead last in touches in the post when he's 7 foot probably or 6'11" is pretty bad.
Mm-hmm.
And they have a lot of good guards, and I get they want to get into some of that kind of stuff, but none of them are even on the same planet as Anthony Davis, and you got to build everything around him and fit your pieces, through him first. And he got on the Team USA's coaching squad. Not quite sure what they saw in Monty Williams. I don't know.
One of the good old boys.
I mean,
man.
he must be a great guy.
Must be a really awesome guy.
Must pick up the tabs a lot. I don't really get it.
And you know what? Monty's just really funny. Let's just bring him along for the ride.
But he seems like a pretty intense coach.
He is. He is.
To
the post touches point though, Anthony Davis he's more of like a mid perimeter guy, pick and pop. Yeah, perfect description.
Yeah.
He's got a great mid range shot. It's beautiful.
I agree 100% with that. Yeah, but the dude's got a post game too.
Yeah.
There's just no way he can't be in the post a little bit more. That's just a scheme thing because he can play there. I'm not saying he's a back to the basket guy like DeMarcus Cousins or something like that, but for him to be almost dead last in post touches is just, he's the best player in the world. You got to find him touches.
There's no way you can block his jump hook. There's no way. I mean, just
anything. Even he posts
anything
up,
he puts up.
Even if he posts up and squares up to the basket. You know what I mean? Like he's just going to be a problem no matter where he's at. But it's working right now. Their record's solid. I don't know where they stand, but they're winning games. Anthony Davis's numbers are out the roof. To me, it just kind of speaks volumes to what his potential is. If he was in a system where he got even more touches, for him to be averaging the numbers he is now, despite that, is pretty insane. That's really efficient.
They're 6-4 right now, which is good enough to get you the 8th spot in the West. And that would put you at the 4 spot in the East. So, I mean, they're definitely, I want to see them in the playoffs.
Yeah.
They're definitely, you look at them play and they, you think they should be. But with Monty there, just have a feeling they're going to go on some losing streak in there.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, guys, watching that Pelicans-Blazer game, man,
blew that game.
Those two played in the playoffs, man, I think that'd be a hell of a series.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be a fun series
you
to
get a
watch.
healthy Nicholas Batum back. I think that would be a hell of a series to watch.
So hey guys, I don't want to cut us off, but we're about 5 minutes away from the 2-hour mark. I don't want to continue to indulge ourselves too much longer. But hey, I have one question left. Maybe you guys might find this interesting. I guess it's a surprise. So do you guys find this as surprising as I do? So Kevin Love right now is the 11th best rebounder in the NBA. And I always kind of considered him one of the best, like at least rebounders in the NBA. He was a 14, 15 rebound guy, and now he's averaging 10. Are you guys surprised by that as I am?
No.
Do you, like in terms of what, like that he's not higher up on that list or that?
Right. Like we got people like Pau Gasol ahead of him. Like I would never think Pau would be a better rebounder than Love. Even, in considering Pau's next to Joakim Noah and Taj Gibson. And I understand LeBron's taking some rebounds away and they're kind of using him as a perimeter power forward. But I'm just surprised to see his numbers as low as they are in the rebounding.
My reason for saying no is because I kind of hit on it in the first podcast that the reason I think they have a chance to win, or I should say the only way they can win the NBA championship is if Varejao stays healthy. Mm-hmm. And Varejao, he's playing limited minutes, but in those minutes he gobbles up rebounds. Mm-hmm. And so he starts the game with Love, and he rebounds the ball well. So A, he's got another guy in there rebounding with him, and B, I watched that dude steal rebounds from players with the T-Wolves. Like, I mean, free throws, he'd be like wrestling for the ball with his own team just to get a rebound. And so, I mean, I honestly wouldn't exaggerate saying he got 2 or 3 rebounds a game that weren't even really his, but he just took it from another guy on his team.
Sure.
And I don't think he's getting those rebounds now with the Cavs.
Okay.
Hey, real quick, did anyone have Dwight today?
Yes.
No,
Man, that sucks. Like that he's out tonight.
Oh, he's
I
out.
didn't have him.
Yeah, he's out.
Well, my
That's gonna
$9,
kill a
I
lot
can just
of-
flush
lot of
my
people.
$9 down the drain.
You had Dwight,
I
CH?
think I had him on one team. I didn't have him.
I
over-
think that was a great play, though. If there was no news that he was coming out,
right.
and
CH,
so I
you
think
had
that
Dwight
was
tonight?
the right play.
I had Dwight tonight.
Bro, it's just,
Must
not,
have
it's
just
just not going your way.
Dude, yeah, like I said, right now I'm a black cat.
Oh my god.
It'll pass, man.
Hey,
It'll
You're a
pass.
like
fish
I
right
said,
now, dude.
I've always, like, everything that I believe in daily fantasy is you have to stick with your system. Dwight Howard was a great play tonight, and whether he played or whether he put up a dud, you can't let that affect your next day, because if you pick the right, like, statistically everything is in play, right? That's going to happen 60% of the time, right? Instead of you, like, being all over the board saying, well, tonight I feel like this, and just throwing something out there, you know?
Yeah.
Definitely.
So
Let's go, Pistons.
your luck's going to turn, CH. Your luck's
Yeah,
going to turn.
oh, definitely. Yeah, that's part of the learning process. Some of them have been mistakes, definitely. And, it's a learning curve figuring it out. And unfortunately, you have to lose to figure it out sometimes. And that's just what it is right now. And from Pop the Trunk Sports, I'm Chris Hendricks. From Rocky and Pocatello, TK and Rory, we will see you next time.
All right, guys. Peace out.
I see it.
Late.